decided to join virtually.
Nothing to say, right?
Should we go ahead and get started? Jesse, we need Jesse.
All right. I'm good on my end. We're recording and live, so
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Wednesday, October 21st, Providence City Council meeting. My name is John Drew. I am Providence City Mayor. We have our council members here. We have Terry Kirk, we have Janelle Seeley, we have Brent Beth, and Christina Eck is here. I don't see Josh Paulson. I'm looking at the screen. I know he indicated he wanted to attend virtually. I don't see him on the screen. If and when he does check in, we'll make a note of his arrival. Let's go ahead and get started. So we do have a quorum. So we have 4 voting members. And I might mention, since we have 4 voting members, if we have an issue we're voting on, I'm not saying it's going to happen, and it's a tie, and it's two going one way, 2 the other, the mayor has an opportunity to vote. In my 7 years on the council and as mayor, I've only seen it happen once. On that note, let's go ahead and get started with the Pledge of Allegiance.
There's Josh.
There's Josh. Make a note, Josh Paulson arrived. All right.
I don't know. My computer does not like city council meeting, and I always have to restart it when this happens. I will plan better next time.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
The flag of the United
the republic
One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as is customary, our agenda includes an opportunity for a member of the council or a member of the audience to offer a thought for the day or a prayer. So anyone here attending either electronically or in person is welcome to raise their hand and indicate their interest. I see Brent got his hand raised. Go ahead, Brent. Lead us in the thought or prayer.
I'd like to express a prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're very grateful this evening to come before Thee and come to City Council meeting. We're grateful, Father in heaven, for the responsibility which the city citizens have put the trust in us. Father in heaven, we pray as we deliberate and consider this evening that we might do so with open minds and fairness to the participants as well as to the city as a whole. We pray also, Father in heaven, that Thy Spirit will guide us and direct us as we interact with one another. We pray, Father in heaven, at this time of the pandemic, that Thy blessings might shower down upon us, that we might find solutions to our problems, so that our many resulting challenges can be mitigated. We're grateful for these many blessings, and we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Brent. Let's go ahead with the staff reports. We have Scarlett, our Administrative Services Director. Where's Rob? He said he was going to be here.
He's in his office. You want me to go get him?
Oh, he's on virtually.
Oh, okay, there's Rob.
hello,
And Ryan, our city manager, is with us as well. So, Rob, you want to go ahead and start with your report on public works?
sure.
Rob, can I ask you a question? Where are you at?
Certainly.
Looks like you're laying on the road. You got a crack behind you.
Yeah, those wallpapers that come with these are pretty fun.
Holy smokes.
I think for some reason, I think there's a point he wants to make tonight.
Yeah, the Band-Aids on roads. We need to get away from those Band-Aids and do a better job. Josh Polson, is that a real brick wall behind you?
That is a real brick wall. Yeah.
Oh.
Rob, I want to see you go like this though. Can you just close your eyes and put your hands up like this? Yeah, there you go.
You're just another brick in the wall.
So staff report, winter is coming. So yeah, we've got every department doing lots of different things to prepare for that. Hopefully the snow don't hit us too fast and hard before it catches everybody off guard like it tends to do from time to time. But we did rotomill and repave a couple of blocks just here recently with some leftover funds that we had from our preservation budget. So those are much smoother than they've ever been as far as my knowledge of those 2 blocks. And so it's really, really nice to see a couple of really bad blocks get repaved. We kind of added a little bit of fresh road base and created some slope to those roads that they never had either. So that's a good thing that's recently occurred. Any questions related to those 2 blocks? I don't know if you've seen them or knew that we were doing them or happened to drive on them already.
Can you say that one more time? What blocks those were?
So we did 2nd North between 1st West and Main Street, kind of by the assisted living. And then we did 1st East between 2nd North and 3rd North, which was a long overdue bumpy road. So it's good to have those 2 done. They were narrow and fairly cheap and easy to repair like that, especially since the infrastructure under the road wasn't in bad shape when it came to subgrade / utilities. And so being able to find a little funds to make such a big difference to a roadway like that was really good.
Rob, that one between 2nd North and 3rd North. Oh, what a wonderful road. You have done a fantastic job there. That's when you don't have to hang on to the seat or your seat and the steering wheel and everything anymore. You can just go down it normally. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
All the
good one to
residents
knock
that I've talked to love it.
I think a lot of the people that live in the Brookside area will tend to want to actually go that way now and maybe help alleviate a little bit of the traffic that does hit the Brookside area on Spring Creek Parkway that's going to open up, which will add traffic to that road. But if we can deplete a little traffic to that road by having a better avenue out of that area, that might help to some degree.
Thank you.
That was a rotomill, not a full road rebuild.
So speaking of those crossings, the crossing next to the charter school is pretty much complete. There's still a couple of really small loose ends that we haven't opened it until we have all the loose ends tidied up, so that just for safety and completion reasons, really. We're probably going to open it though within the week, probably someday next week. I anticipate opening the west crossing. We've been in communication with the charter school and we've talked about different things in relation to that. But it's looking great, and I think it took a while, but I think we got a good product in the end. So that crossings went well. The other crossing by the Vineyard subdivision is going to be paved this coming Friday if all goes as planned on the scheduling. They'll have quite a few loose ends to do, but after the pavement goes down on that one, such as sidewalk and handrails and stuff like that. But I don't think it'll take them long to tie off all their loose ends, that we can open that one before winter really gets here as well. Any questions on those 2 crossings? Okay. We're working on a sewer master plan, as Ryan might have a little update related to that, but the staff has been helping Sunrise Engineering work on getting a sewer master plan completed, and so it's underway. Water use is down with all the colder temps that we've seen lately, and I actually spoke with Spring Creek Ditch Company today, well, with Ralph Daniels, and he's kind of put his whole system into hibernation mode as of today. And so we'll be able to utilize a little bit of extra drinking water in that realm and be able to probably service the entire town through Broad Hollow Spring and winterize and hibernate all our wells and booster stations as of today. So that's great news as well. I'm just full of good news this go around. We got a new park at the Zollinger Playground. Some more good news. It's not quite finished because there was a few missing parts that didn't come in the boxes, so to speak, but they should be here shortly as well. I don't know if anybody's went down there besides me and played on it, but it's a cool little new park at that park. Sprinkler systems are all winterized as of, I think, yesterday. And so they're going to start working on winterizing the restrooms. So you'll start seeing those get shut down for the winter as well. The last thing I'd like to remind everybody is that we still are doing this leaf bag cleanup detail. And we'll start that here very, very soon, I'm sure. But what I'd like you to help me spread the word on is to not blow and rake the leaves into the gutters and the ditches or the streets for that matter. We pick up leaf bags. We don't come around cleaning up messes in the curbs because we've got to be prepared for the fall storms. If we put a lot of leaves in the gutters and the storm hits, it creates major problems for the downstream folks. So leaf bag pickup is the service we provide, and we will do a good job, I'm sure, like always, when it comes to picking up everybody's bags and we will continue to pick up those bags until snow really starts to hit us and our bag picker uppers have to jump in snowplows. We do some leaf bag picking up when the snow is on the ground, but that's about the end of it. Once the bags start getting buried in snow, that's about the time we stop picking them up. So winter kind of dictates some of that, but depending on how fast and how hard winter does roll in, we'll just keep working on them. That's all I have.
Any questions for Rob?
No, I just want to express my gratitude for all that you do, Rob. You're a busy man and we appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thanks,
And-
Rob.
Put the Band-Aids on the road.
This year, it's a Band-Aid. Next year, we put in a new room. All
Sounds
right,
great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Scarlett, are you?
Is it just me? I don't have video of the home base any longer. Is everyone else missing Mayor Drew and Carrie?
I still have it.
I still have them.
So do I.
My computer is on downstairs. I have the big flat screen on. I don't. It's on downstairs. You can see me here. You can see the counter.
I did turn off the downstairs for the mayor's downstairs, but you should still see Scarlett with, I mean, you should still see the mayor and Chris and Carrie, it looks like. Anyway, anybody else having issues on that one?
Nope, I think we're good. Scarlett?
You should have received an email from me on Thursday or Friday. I was going to check my notes, certifying the petition of annexation for the Furman Low annexation request that Kent Dunkley's the agent for. That will start publishing on Saturday in the newspaper. So it will publish for 3 consecutive weeks. There is a 30-day protest period that runs concurrently with that. So those just a few days longer than the publication time does. If there are no protests, we can schedule a public hearing to consider the annexation. And then move forward. If there are protests, then we will wait until it goes through the boundary commission and see what their decision is and go from there. So that's where we're at on that. In the meantime, not at the 28th meeting, but at the meeting in November, we will hold a public hearing on their request for a MFM zone, if that's what they're still intending to request in the planning commission, so that they can make a recommendation on that. We are still active with land use items and zoning, residential zoning clearances. So our staff is keeping quite busy on that. In our recreation, it's winding down for a few minutes. The last flag football game will be tomorrow night, and then that little program will be done. And then we won't have any outdoor activities until in the spring. We will have on December 10th, we are working with the youth council, and Carrie can report more on that. We've got a great volunteer leader, I think, that's going to be able to work with Carrie on that youth council. And it's like we've got a great bunch of kids, but we're going to work with the youth council on the annual tree lighting, which will be December 10th, Carrie?
Yes, Thursday.
Thursday night, December 10th. So that's pretty much everything I have to report on right now. So if there's questions, I'll be happy to entertain them, but we'll just moving along.
Questions for Scarlett? Brent?
Yeah, Scarlett, I just a point of trying to help me understand. At what point, now we voted last time to proceed with the annexation, so the staff can sit down with the people making the petition and discuss issues related to the annexation. At what point do we see what the staff has worked out with the people making the request for annexation, to see what the points are being required for the annexation?
The formal draft of that will go out with your agenda packets at the time that we schedule it for the public hearing. If so, that would be in probably I'd have to look at the calendar, but it's probably going to be your December meeting.
December, did you say?
Yes, I think that's what it would be. I'd have to look at the calendar for sure, but I think it will be the December meeting. I don't think we'll be able to make the November. If there is a protest, though, Brent, then that will delay everything at least an additional 30 days. So it may even be January. I don't anticipate, but you just never know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Any more questions for Scarlett? Brian, you with us?
I am here. You ready for me?
Brian, our city manager, is up.
All right, I do have, like Rob, I have some good news or things we're working on. Few of those are the master plans. We are working on the Park Trails and Recreation Master Plan. We'll have a presentation tonight on the status of that. We have the transportation master plan, and we've got as staff, we've got the first draft of that, and we're still in the review of that. Wasn't quite ready for this one, but we'll get it ready and bring it to you. Should be on the next council for a review, and then we've got sewer, and they're just gathering data. They've done a lot of the gathering. They've had meters in some of the sewer lines. They've been doing a lot of work, and they've been measuring all the different manholes, or at least a quarter of them. So anyway, they're making progress. Few things as far as grants go. We've applied for 100% grant for a fiber master plan from the Government Financial Officers Association. It's probably competitive. I think our chances are slim, but it came out, we turned it around and got an application in just in case. So we'll see how that goes. We're working on a grant application for the Safe Routes to School around Providence Elementary. We have been working with CCID. We've reached out to Providence, the Spring Creek Middle School. But we're getting a lot of help from the Providence Elementary. That would be about $150,000 grant, and it would be 90% grant. We'd have a 10% match to that. We're also working in supporting River Heights. They're looking at a Safe Routes to School application. That application will go along from 290 south, 290 north, up towards their towards the church that's there on 600 south. They're 600 south, so they're putting in a sidewalk to get it to River Heights Elementary. So we're supportive of that and have been helpful there. We're also preparing a potential grant for the BRIC, which is a FEMA grant. And that's probably a $200,000 to $400,000 grant at 90 to 93% grant. And then COG, and you're aware of that one, but we met with the COG and made a presentation there. It is it's about a $1.2 million project and about just under $1 million grant. Most of the other is things that the COG wouldn't cover, like they don't cover curb and gutter. And we've already done the right-of-way acquisition. Most of that's been acquired, and they wouldn't cover that one. So that's an 83%. If we can get it, it's about 83% grant. So roughly $1 million there. So we have several different grants that we're looking for. Some probably just counting as experience right now to get things together. But if you never apply, then you never get any. So we're hopeful. So another thing we've been doing, and maybe one of the other council members will speak on this, Janelle or Carrie, but we've been meeting with Spring Creek Water continually there. We have that contract on the agenda today. And if you haven't been to Zollinger Park, that playground that Rob brought up really is nice. We've got a really good expansion of that. And I think I sent y'all a picture, but and then the Fiber Technical Committee, and I'm not sure if the mayor will talk on that one. But Rob and I, we traveled out to Vernal. We traveled there and back in the same day, and saw the construction site, saw the construction work, went through their data warehouse and data center, had a pretty good tour. We were out there for, I think, 5 or 6 hours and then just came back. So that was a good trip, good education. And then we continue to meet as a technical advisory committee. We are making progress as towards a contract with Strata. And as we'd been directed at the last meeting, we knew it wasn't going to probably be ready for this meeting, but we hope for maybe next one. So we'll see if we can have it ready for either November or December. So anyway, several things we're working on. Happy to take any questions that you have for me.
Ryan, just to keep me, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Just to keep me up to speed, COG is for 100 South, right?
Correct.
Okay. And there, that still is in the process. Is that what you're saying?
We've made our presentation. We're just waiting for the COG members to score. The mayors, it's now in their hands to score the projects.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Ryan,
Yes.
what was the FEMA grant again? You said, I didn't hear what you said that was.
So the FEMA grant would be to replace box culverts and culverts on 300 East. There's 3 of them, and we're still working on an estimate, but somewhere probably between the $200,000 and $400,000 range.
Okay, thanks.
Right?
I got one more question. Out on 300 East, as we between Providence and River Heights, will the youth, the children there, will they go to the River Heights Elementary? Is that why we're working jointly with them? Is that where they'll head for school?
That's correct. That's in the boundary. So they would go up there. So above, and I'm not sure the exact boundary, but we looked at it, but yeah. So they would be going to River Heights Elementary. They are applying for 100% grant in trading to do that. We filled ours, including a little bit would help ours, but they are applying, so we won't have any financial commitment to their project.
Anything more for Ryan? Okay, let's move on. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep.
So we have the approval of the minutes for those September 2nd and September 16th. The second was a workshop. We talked fiber. Need a motion to approve the minutes from someone on the council. Hearing no
I'll make
motion.
a motion to approve the minutes of September 2nd.
Okay. Motion from Councilwoman Seeley. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion from Councilwoman Kirk. Discussion. This is the 2nd of September. I did not see any necessary changes. Anyone have any comments, corrections? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote to approve the minutes of September 2nd. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay? Unanimous. All right. Need a motion to approve the minutes of September 16th. That was a regular council meeting. I have one change. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from September 16th.
Councilman Kirk makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Councilwoman Seeley. Discussion. Let me just point out what I have. Chief Hannig was here that day, and he discussed what is called Community Connect. And I believe he sent me the materials on that, and I sent it out to the council members. Did you all get it?
Yes.
Johnson. So I went online, I plugged my information in. I got in touch with Chief Hannig. He verified that my information showed up complete on his end. So it's ready to roll. What I'm going to do is put it in the November newsletter and simultaneously get it out on Facebook and Twitter. Council members, I encourage you also do the same. But it's in the minutes is something else. And let me find out where I circled it. Anyway, it's called Community Connect. It was called something else in there. Or you see it? Where Chief Hannig was.
I think you're referring to, it's the top of page 205, line 56 and 57. He said Logan City has a new software program called First Do Size Up that helps them access important information. I think the software that they're using may be called First Do Size Up, but the plan, or I mean, their program, what they put out and what they're calling it is Community Connect. So but I don't know, but I will have Jesse check that for you and make sure that we get that right. Does anyone on
Okay,
the council remember whether that was the name of his software program or whether we just got something in here inaccurately?
I think the name's correct.
That it was you think the first do size up is correct?
No, Community Connect.
Okay, all right, thanks, Janelle.
Any other changes? Comments, council? Hearing none, let's call for a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes of September 16th? Signify by saying aye.
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 Nay? Hearing none, unanimous. Thank you. Let's move on. Public comments. Citizens may express their views to the city council on issues within the city's jurisdiction. Public comments may also be sent to Providence City, Utah at gmail.com or text comments. The city council may act on an item if it arose subsequent to the posting of this agenda and the city council determines that an emergency exists. Garland, I know you have an email from Ralph Daniels. You want to go ahead and read that, or you want to read that because he's talking about the item number 6, the resolution to approve the agreement between Spring Creek and the city.
Correct. I actually have 2 emails. One is on item number 6, and then the other one is on item number 4. It's totally your call, Mayor. If you want me to wait and read them during the discussion, I can do that, or I can read them. Yeah, whichever you choose.
That's they're specific to the agenda items. We usually reserve the discussion for them. Any other public comments on non-agenda items?
I don't have any other public comments.
Okay. Council okay with that?
So,
Ralph copied all the council members as well, his message. So, all right.
I don't have an email from Ralph.
I don't either.
I forwarded. It's a very nice email.
Yeah, he sent it. I went to Christina, Carrie, Josh, Brent.
You should have
I
got
don't
it.
think I got it either.
What?
All right. Scarlett agreed.
I just got the forwarded ones from you.
I just got it. Yeah.
All right, let's close the public comment portion of our council meeting and move on. We have a public hearing. Item number 1, we only have one item for public hearing tonight. Bonds to be issued. Purpose of this public hearing is to receive input from the public with respect to the issuance of Providence City's water revenue bonds in one or more series. In the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $2 million for water system improvements and related improvements. Ryan, you want to introduce this and then open up the floor for public comment?
Yes, first of all, we do have our bond counsel online with us, so if there's any questions, I believe Jeanette is with the bond counsel. But this is about building our water tank. So we've gone out, we did a preliminary that was a total possible of the 2 million. This is the actual award of the 1.99 million. And so we adopt this, then we can draw on this loan. So anyway, that's what this is. It's just the next step in the bond closing process. So Jeanette, if you have anything you want to add to that, or I assume it's Jeanette.
Ryan, this is Eric
Yep.
John.
Eric, all right.
Can you hear me, Ryan?
Yes, go ahead, Eric.
Oh, yeah. Well, the city went out and got a great financing package from the Community Impact Board, 1.5% interest for just under $2 million for the new water tank. Are there questions by any city council members?
And Eric is our bond counsel. He's the actual attorney that would represent us with that bond.
What you're doing tonight is you're just having a public hearing to hear from the public. This is required by law before you can make a decision. And then after hearing from the public, you can make a decision as to whether to move forward or not. Let me just explain briefly. Municipal bond is kind of a fancy term for a loan. It's the way that the Utah legislature has required public bodies to incur debt. And essentially that loan is memorialized and as a municipal bond. And so sometimes people hear that word and they think it's something all fancy, but it's just a debt by the city, and the Community Impact Board, the state agency, is the lender. This will be repaid over 30 years and can be prepaid at any time with no penalty. So with that, I guess we probably ought to open it up and see if there's any comments from the public.
We have anything?
We did not receive any comments by email or text.
And I don't have any comments in this meeting by question or chat.
Brent?
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So I remember us talking about that this was estimated to be at $2 million. Building costs are rising rather rapidly. And I guess the question is, do we have anybody locked in, or are we now going to, when we get the bond, put it out for bid? And what happens if it comes in higher than the $2 million?
That's a great question. I'd answer that if you'd let me, Mayor.
Sure.
So at this point, we don't have a contractor selected. We have it to the Division of Drinking Water. But originally, when we took this to the CIB, we were going to put in $400,000. They said, "Why don't you keep your money? We'll loan it all. We'll loan 100% to you of whatever of up to this amount." So if we have to come back, we do have money in our budget that we could fund overage if that comes to it. If it goes under, then we return whatever money we don't need. It would sit in a PTIF account, and we get the benefit of any of the interest it makes during the time that construction is occurring. So during that period of time, we'll make whatever our PTIF account is making. We have that. So it's not like a construction loan for many others that we draw it down. They'll issue us the entire amount, and then we'll draw on that PTIF, but we get the benefit of the interest in that account. So hopefully that helps to answer the question.
Great, thank you.
Good question, good answer. Any more questions or comments from the council? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Let's move on to our administrative items. We've got 6 items, followed by 1 legislative item, which is a rezone. Moving from the public hearing on the bonds, item number 1 is a resolution to approve the water revenue bond. Resolution 032-2020. Final bond resolution, Providence City Council will consider for adoption a resolution authorizing $1,990,000 water revenue bonds, Series 2020, to finance water system improvements and related matters. Need a motion on item number 1.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Is that Christina?
I'll make a motion that we approve item number 1, resolution 032-2020, the water revenue bond.
Motion from Councilwoman X, second from.
I'll second it.
Okay. Further discussion, comments, questions? Can I call for a vote? All in favor of approving resolution 032-2020 water revenue bond, final bond resolution, signify by saying aye.
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 Nay? Hearing none, it's unanimous. Thank you. Let's move on to item number 2, presentation and discussion. Representatives from MHTN will discuss the progress on the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Continuous Improvement Master Plan. And I see we have some visitors with us. Amanda, Vince, and Danny, are you speaking on the Parks and Recreation Plan as well?
Yeah, I'm just here for any questions about the trails.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Don't need a motion on this. Vince, are you going to lead us on that?
Amanda's going to present her screen, and Ryan's going to start us off. Ryan Wallace with our office.
Great. Thanks so much for having us with you tonight, this evening. We appreciate the opportunity to be on your agenda, and our team would like to express our gratitude for the opportunity to serve Providence in this capacity, preparing a Parks, Trails, and Recreation Master Plan. We've been working with a steering committee for the last 3 or 4 months. We began in August. We meet on a bi-weekly basis. The steering committee is composed of Parks member boards, members of your community. Several city council members have participated. We're careful not to exceed the number to form a quorum at any of our meetings, but we have had participation from city council members. It's been a good process to date. We've received all the information we've needed from you. The steering committee has helped give us direction. And what we'd like to share with you tonight is just an update on the progress of your plan. We've found from past experience working on these that the more opportunities we can interact with the council and the public, there's a greater level of buy-in, greater level of understanding. So tonight we're going to present an update. We'll try to keep it brief, but we'd love to hear what questions you have. And at the conclusion of our presentation, we'd like to give you just a glimpse of some of the draft recommendations regarding parks, trails, and recreation to get your feedback, to make sure we're headed in the right direction and the direction that this council and the citizens who you represent feel would be the direction you'd like to see. One of the things we began the process with was outlining the objectives that the study and plan would try to address. Now, it's my understanding you've received the link to this story map, and you'll have access to go into the details of this, and we'd love to hear any comments you have after this meeting, because we're going to try to keep it brief to respect your time this evening. I would like to comment on the first 2 objectives. The first, of course, creating the city's first ever Parks, Trails, and Recreation Continuous Improvement Master Plan. And the piece that you're viewing tonight is the story map. It's an online-based software that we're utilizing to make this more accessible to your community. Not all community members feel that they can approach a multi-100-page PDF document, but this story map format, as you'll see us scrolling through tonight, we feel is a much more approachable way to share with members of the community and allow them to participate in the process. And then secondarily, item number 2, this plan will seek to build upon, coordinate, and incorporate any other city adopted documents such as the general plan. We're also working with some of the other master plan efforts that are occurring right now. As Ryan Snow mentioned, the transportation master plan, we've been in touch to make sure that coordination is occurring where necessary. Another aspect of this project that the steering committee has helped us with is identifying guiding principles. And again, this is another piece that you could dive into. The diagram that you see before you indicates that there are 5 guiding principles leading or serving as guideposts throughout this planning effort. They're things that we've gleaned from other documents, things that were shared to us by other city documents, I should say, that are adopted. Things that we heard from your steering committee members, as I mentioned before, that also includes city staff, and things that came out of a pretty robust community engagement effort that Amanda Dillon will talk to us about shortly. Just wanted to briefly touch on these. So Amanda, if you wouldn't mind scrolling to the right to show the functionality of the story map. I won't read everything here, but I'll hit the highlights for you. So guiding principle 1, provide a diversity of inclusive offerings. This is just making sure that your parks, trails, and recreation provide something for everyone in your community, regardless of age or ability or skill level. The second guiding principle focuses on being well connected. This ties in neatly with the transportation master plan that's ongoing, ensuring that access to parks is available to all residents. Our third guiding principle recognizes the rich heritage of Providence. While building upon that, it also looks to meet the needs of current and future populations. Our fourth guiding principle is sustainable and responsible, that anything that is planned is considerate of the resources over which the city manages, both financial and environmental. Finally, our last guiding principle is a community that gathers. This is something we heard very consistently, that parks and amenity spaces such as trails are places that the community comes together, and finding more opportunities for the community to do that across throughout the community is something that was highly valued and something we're trying to find as we look through recommendations. So I'm going to now turn it over to Amanda Dillon, who's going to talk to us about community engagement. We hope that you've seen the survey that's gone out. She'll talk about those results. And we hope that you've seen some of us out at some of the events, the concerts you had over the summer, trying to gather feedback there as well. So Amanda.
Thanks, Ryan. So as Ryan said, there's a lot of information in the story map. Unfortunately, we don't have the time today to jump into all the details. So we're going to be giving a very high level overview and point you more to where you can find more information if you're interested in looking. So this diagram here on the right just gives an overview of our process. And so we follow these 4 pillars of community engagement. So the first is inform, second is consult, third is involve, and fourth is collaborate. And so as Ryan said, we've been able to do a pretty robust community engagement process despite the fact of restrictions posed by COVID during this time. We've so far had 8 steering committee meetings. We will plan on having 2 city council presentations. So this progress presentation today, and then another one when you're ready to look at adopting the plan. We were pleased to have 280 responses to a citywide survey that went out for several weeks earlier this year. We also did 10 focus interviews with various individuals from the community that the steering committee identified for us. And then we also represented the process of planning for parks, trails, and recreation at 2 in-person concerts that you held there in Providence over the summer. I won't go through all of the online survey responses, but if you click on that link, it'll pull up this dashboard that will allow you to dive into all of this survey data and all of the results so you can see exactly how your community feels about parks, trails, and recreation. Instead, what I want to spend a little bit of time on right now is discussing the key findings that we have synthesized from those various community engagement events. So generally, what we found is that the city needs to promote, communicate, and advertise Providence offerings across its system. We found that most people feel like they do not know the full extent of parks, trails, recreation offerings, and that the city could benefit from seeing better engagement, better participation, if they were to increase awareness of those different offerings. There was a strong and widespread desire to create and improve trails in Providence. When we asked, what was your most favored recreation or park or trail amenity that the city had to offer, trails came to the top. And when we asked, what would you like to see Providence doing more of, trails also came to the top. And then finally, when asked respondents to prioritize 3 different ways that Providence should move forward in parks, trails, and recreation, we heard that residents thought that the city should acquire more parkland and trail land now before it's developed, improve amenities second, and then maintain facilities third. And so I'm just going to go over one of the key findings from Parks, Trails, and Recreation and allow you all to come back here and read through the rest. For parks, a big finding was that there was a large demand for open fields that allow flexibility in what sport, activity, game is played. People indicated that they wanted space for diverse sports, including soccer, football, and lacrosse, and that there just wasn't a lot of that type of space in the city, and that individuals and teams and leagues had to go to neighboring cities. For trails, as I mentioned at the top, survey respondents really like trails and they want more of them, but there was a desire for safe and connected trails through the city. For recreation, interestingly, 40% of the survey respondents did not participate in recreation, but the families that do participate, especially in baseball, they love it. They brag about it. They told us that Providence is well known in the valley for its baseball leagues and for its facilities and for how well they're maintained. But overall, there was a strong desire for more transparency in how recreation leagues and teams are formed. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vince to continue on.
All right, so our next part of the process is we inventoried all of the parks. So I got the opportunity to hang out with Shane Hansen for a morning, and I visited all of the parks and we looked at them. We looked at the condition of all the parks along with all of their amenities. And so we've taken photographs of everything. If you go to the story map and you click on one of the numbers there as she's doing, it will show you the park, how many acres. And if you click the read more, then it tells you what amenities are in each park. And again, feel free to take time to go through and look at all of those. Next thing we looked at is we looked at the demographics of the city, and our estimated population here for 2020 is 8,000 people, and we're expecting an annual growth rate of 1.8%. And so over 10 years, that will increase the population of Providence to 9,600 people. That just means that there's more people coming, which then would necessitate more space for people to recreate. We also looked at some standards for different parks. And so there's some typical standards for each type of park. So we've listed the types of parks as local parks, and these typically are anything under 2 acres in size. There's typically some open lawn areas, some picnic benches, some tables, and possibly a playground or a pavilion of some sort that serves that community. Next in size is a neighborhood park. These are typically larger, anywhere between 2 and 10 acres in size. They're going to provide more. So they're going to have a sport court or a larger type of a field. There's typically open turf areas, some sort of playgrounds, pavilions, picnic seating, and that type of thing. And then there's the larger size, or next size up there is typically a community park, and that's typically anywhere between 10 and 20 acres. And again, the amenities keep growing the larger the park. And then the final size here is the regional park. That's typically 20 acres or larger, or in our case, it's facilities that meet a regional goal. So as we go back to the beginning, there are 6 parks in the city of Providence that would qualify as a local park. There's 3 parks that meet the neighborhood in terms of size, and then there's 2 parks which don't necessarily have the 20 acres, but because of their use, we qualify them as regional parks, and that's Zollinger Park and Von Bear Park. What we've done then really quick is we've mapped out these different parks and the kind of a radius of what each park would serve. And so you can tell that we've got some missing spots, typically on the south end of the city and up kind of in the northwest corner. We can get into a small discussion on the levels of service for each park or the park system as a whole. And typically right now there's 5.7 acres per 1,000 people in the city of Providence. Trails conditions in terms of actual paved or marked trails. This map again shows us where the trails are in the city. And that's the blue dashed lines. There's a trail here at Von Bear Park, a smaller trail here on the south end, and then of course the Bonneville non-paved trail that runs across the Bonneville shoreline there. And then there's a paved area down at 1700 South. Okay. And then there's more issues here, or more issues. There's more stuff here with relation to the different standards of the different trails and trailheads. And we'll leave that to you to go through and look at those. What we did then is we took all of the parks, and what we have right here is just a preliminary recommendation for the city parks as a whole. A couple of these are things, increase the use of existing park space by promoting the parks and amenities better. We've talked about things such as creating four-season activities, improving or adding signage so that people know where the parks are. Second would be to acquire or more parkland or increase the amount of land that's there. And this goes under the auspices of once the land is gone, it's very difficult to acquire after that point. A third was create more park space for large gatherings in parks. That was something that was well documented in the survey and is part of the steering committee, that people wanted a place to gather. And fourth was to diversify the offerings at the park, increase space for other field sports, lacrosse, soccer, or places for people just to come and recreate, throw a frisbee, that type of things. Other ones that we're recommending, add more seasonal part-time staff, more shade trees to more of the parks, include parking lots at new parks, and explore or add accessibility measures to the parks. For the trails, we have a couple of recommendations for the trails. And this would be to increase the amount of trails that are marked in the city. So a lot of these are just more paint markings on the streets that would allow a pedestrian or a cyclist to have a space to ride or to walk or to run without being endangered by the cars. And those are the basic things here. And again, we have some details on shared paths for bicyclists, which would let runners, walkers, cyclists have that. And then we're proposing some trail revisions in Von Bear to allow for a little bit more accessibility in there. We're also looking at Zollinger Park and providing a pathway through Zollinger Park and all the way over into the Macy's shopping area that would allow people, and particularly kids, to access the school there. In terms of our next steps, we're in the process of coming up with individual park recommendations for each individual park, whether it be to add more amenities or more trails to the park, or in some cases acquiring or looking at extending the parks to increase the amount of space. And then we're looking at getting out at least a draft version of a good portion of this plan for the steering committee to review coming up here this week. Are there any questions? Hopefully I haven't spoken too quickly.
I just want to share my appreciation for the group, for the committee, and for the firm that's doing this. I think they have done a very good job. It's taken a lot of time, and I appreciate each one that is in that steering committee and on this firm that have taken the time to work on this project. It is a big project, and it is one of the priorities that I think the city set out for us when they talked about parks and that earlier this year.
Ryan, thank you for that note. We've really enjoyed the collaboration. Our team has noted on several occasions the amount of how much the steering committee members truly care about the community and the great ideas that they've put forward. So we'll be really excited to see the conclusion of this and how it all comes together. There's been great participation and we appreciate it.
Just
Ryan,
go ahead.
One of the things Vince mentioned was one of the products of the study will be to end up with a plan to make improvements in certain parks, as well as acquiring additional park space. Does this include, or is this a separate exercise to update our impact fees for parks? I do know that part of this exercise is to task City Council with determining whether or not the level of service needs to stay the same or we choose to improve. But the last time we had an impact fee study done in the capital project study done for parks, 14 years.
Mayor, this does take us all the way up to that point. That is one thing. It takes us to the capital improvement level of service. We have met with Zions Bank as one of those partners that is in partnership with this. So we fully intend that would take us all the way to the point that we can get to know what our impact fee will be and where it'll go. So I'll have to look on the scope out where it ends with them, but we fully intend that is where it's headed at some point.
Ryan, are there grants for parks? You know, I see our land being utilized quite readily. People are gobbling it up right and left. And I am concerned about having, parks and what we need, trails and whatnot. Are there grants that we can go after, and are we doing that? You probably have said you were, and I just want to reaffirm what's happening.
So the first part to get a lot of the grants is to have this plan. Then we could take this plan. There is some opportunities, especially on the trail side, whether they're urban or rural trails. So whether they're sidewalks or whether they're more of a rural trail, there are different grant avenues that way. But the biggest one is to have a planning first. And so as we do that, then we can look the raw land to build a park. I'm unaware of any grants for that specific one. But the nice thing with having a firm like MHGN is they can help us identify some of those areas. I hope I don't misspeak there, but I believe that's a great thing to have a firm like MHGN that has done a lot of these. They know where funding is and they can point us in the right direction, and that'll be helpful.
That's correct.
You know, the city of Nibley floated a $4 or $5 million bond to acquire park space. I don't know how far back that goes. I took my wife down to the airport on the way back, stopped and got off the freeway at Bountiful. There was a sign right off the freeway, vote yes on Bountiful's parks bond measure that's on the ballot.
And that would definitely be another option to be able to do that. We can do a lot of different things. But as far as land, I'm unaware at this point of specific land acquisition ones. But bonding that's what Nibley did. Once you have the land, then there are ways, and maybe it's through citizen contributions, maybe they have some, and if you show a plan, I think the citizens are a lot more willing to follow and say, yeah, okay, you've thought this out, you've included the public, and they're a lot more willing to support it once you have a plan in place.
I might also just add that as we've been doing the public engagement part of this, we heard that sentiment that you just made at the end there, Ryan, that the residents are really interested in putting forth really great parks. There's a strong history of citizen involvement in creating the parks that you do have. And so it seems like that tradition could be carried forward.
All right, thank you for that. Thanks for the presentation.
Okay. Just in last thing there, Ryan, this link is active and we'll be updating as we put more material on it. If anybody has any comments, please email me and we'll look at all the comments and take them into account. Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
All right, can we move on? Any further comments, questions? All right, let's move on to item number 3. Presentation EDC Utah. Alan Brindlesbacher will introduce EDC Utah, give an incentives overview.
So, Mayor, if I could just start a little bit, I've invited Alan to be with us. I was on a incentives conference call with him and some of those things, and we talked about that. And I really thought that this would be helpful for the council to understand what incentives are potentially out there and how we might attract businesses if that's what we want. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But at this point, it is just giving information so that you can at some point make that decision. So this is just helpful information to build in the toolbox to see if we want to use this tool at some point. We're not, as staff, we're not at this point recommending or not recommending this. It's just adding a tool that so you know what the tool might be if we want to. So anyway, Alan, you've got your presentation.
Great, Ryan. Thank you very much, Mayor, Council, and others that are on the call. Look forward to spending a few minutes with you. I'm sitting on my mother's porch in Providence, Utah, and I came up wondering whether I'd be in person or whether I'd do it remotely. And it gave me an excuse to come up and see Mom and visit with her for a few minutes. And truly, to be socially distanced, I maintained that I'll sit out here on the porch, but it's given me an opportunity to see a beautiful Cache Valley sunset. So, and by the way, Mayor and Council, my mother says to say thank you for that new piece of road. She lives in the project just east of the assisted living facility. And so she loves the new piece of roadway. So to you, thank you from my mother, one of your citizens. When Ryan and I talked, and I'll share my screen, if we can get, it worked early on.
There we go.
There we go, and we'll play it from the start. When Ryan and I talked, and we talked a little bit about incentives, I asked the question, where are we with incentives in the city of Providence? And I reminded him of my experience probably 25, 30 years ago, that 25 years ago, the last speeding ticket I've ever received was on Providence Lane. That was when there were barbed wire fences and hayfields on both sides of that roadway. In fact, as I pulled into Providence, I'd look at that beautiful piece of alfalfa where the Macy's and the shopping center now sits. And the Amalga farm boy that's in me, I'm a little bit disappointed that we take away agriculture and alfalfa, but we also realize that we need to go forward. And if we're going to pay for parks, we've got to have a tax base to do that. If we're going to provide the services that our citizens want, we need to do that. I've spent about 35 years of my career both in construction and in the state economic development business. And so I've seen a lot of development over the course of time, and cities having to come to grips with finding a balance. How do you pay for city services? You need a tax base. It reminds me of this circumstance with South Jordan City, probably 30 years ago. An uncle by marriage was the volunteer fire chief in the city of South Jordan at the time. He was always looking to improve his volunteer fire department and come up with new equipment to basically support the need of that growing suburban community in Salt Lake. Well, ultimately, one of their economic development marketing pieces, I recall it fondly, had a beautiful picture of a split rail, white painted fence of a horse pasture. And South Jordan City motto at the time was "Life just off the fast lane." They were promoting their quality of life. Ultimately, the urban sprawl came their way, and they realized that they needed to also develop an industrial base, a sales tax base that would help manage the city. And I don't know whether our MHTN folks are still on the line, but I think it was, by the way, great organization. The 22 years that I spent in the commercial construction industry, MHTN's a great firm. So I just second your selection of them to help you with your parks plan. But ultimately, the city of South Jordan determined that they needed to have an industrial segment too, so that they could pay for all the services that were needed. And worked for Layton Construction Company for 22 years, and ultimately was part of building almost 2 million square feet of Class A office space in the river bottoms in South Jordan, Utah, that has truly provided a tax base, a diversity of an economy in a city that was once purely urban residential. With that said, I think it leads into this discussion. And Ryan, and you set me up very well. And I'm going to take all of about 10 or 12 minutes because I know that you council members have better things to do than listen to me. But we're going to talk philosophy tonight. Nothing more than putting some thoughts into your minds and heads about what's the incentive process? Why would you engage in that process in the city of Providence? I have two slides here that talks about EDC Utah, private nonprofit organization headquartered in Salt Lake that we serve a statewide audience, simply a catalyst for quality job growth in the state of Utah. And we work very closely with the Governor's Office of Economic Development and with about 60 local governments, both county and city, I say from Blanding to Brigham City, throughout the entire state. One of the silver linings for the pandemic this year for me was last year I traveled about 15,000 miles. This year I'm running at about 1,500. So we really work to serve a statewide audience. We're grateful for Providence support, the few dollars that you give us that help us. And hopefully this is tonight is showing some of that value that we're willing to share our expertise and understanding with you. Part of that is some training seminars that we offer through our Community Development Ready Communities program. And I think that's what started this conversation with Ryan to begin with, as we work to better align with communities throughout the state in their economic development initiatives. What is an incentive? A reward to induce, incite, or spur action. There's something that has to move something along, and oftentimes is it a financial incentive, whether it's the support for a specific company or using a tax increment you generate from the development of a project to put in the infrastructure so that that project could go forward. As you note there on the bottom, U.S. localities and states, information from the International Economic Development Council, $70 billion a year in the United States spent on incentives. So what drives the local community's incentive action? We look at 4 key things. Jobs. Is it going to create jobs for the community? Will it bring wages to the community? A capital expenditure. What kind of buildings are going to be put in? What type of infrastructure will be put into place? Telecommunications, sewer, water, gas. Are you going to need to extend those that infrastructure for those types of facilities coming in? And also, what's the commitment to the community by the organization that you're working to support? We think those are 4 key solid observations that you ought to be looking at in your incentives decisions. Why a local incentives policy? If you know where you're going, I think it's just like your parks plan. If you know where you're going, and Ryan, I'm going to steal your words, that if your citizens are comfortable that you have a good plan in place, they're going to be more comfortable in supporting the funding of that, whether it's bonding or however you're going to go about that. And ultimately, we'd see that the same with our economic development incentives policy. If you've got a strategy in place, then you have the confidence that you're going to be able to go forward. Avoiding political battles, alignment of priorities. We were in another county a year and a half ago. We brought in a company that was looking at putting some jobs in said county. And unfortunately, we had a discussion in front of the company. I think it was with a mayor. I think it was with the school board. It was a fairly heated discussion that I told our business development manager after the fact. I said that was a conversation that should have been had a full year before he ever took the company in to watch basically it was an airing of the dirty laundry and the disagreements, the lack of alignment between the city, the school district, and maybe some of the other taxing entities. Those decisions need to be made early on so that when somebody comes to you, you already have your philosophy put into place. Again, proactive economic development efforts then. Put together your economic development strategic plan. Create your vision. Who do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? I use that term fairly loosely. I'm retired, and I still ask myself that question, what do I want to be when I grow up? We have the Development Ready Communities program that I talked about, where we help communities with some community assessments, looking at some of the tools, some of the data that drives them and makes a community what they are. Also then, when you create an incentive, case by case, there's no cookie cutter formula. You have to look at each one of those opportunities that come your way and say, how does this work for us? I talk a little bit about the alignment and who are those public-private partnerships that you're involved with. We got cities, counties, the school district. We were up in Cache Valley on a nice cold snowy day, I think last January, working with the school district as it related to an incentive package that was being put together for Maloof out here in Nibley. Sorry for the car going by, but there goes that diesel engine driving away. But ultimately, as we met with the school district, talking about their engagement and involvement with the Maloof deal in Nibley, that of course would create jobs and build the economy of Cache County. So there's the partnerships that are typically involved. You got private sector businesses, business associations working closely with chambers of commerce, working with the Department of Workforce Services as it relates to jobs. Also, I note there very specifically, hire a private sector consultant if you're really going to get involved. The 3 groups that we typically are engaged with at the Economic Development Corporation of Utah would be these 3, Lewis Young, Robertson, and Birmingham, Smith Hartfigson, and Zions Public Finance. 3 of the key groups here in the state of Utah that make their living supporting communities in building incentive programs. Here are some of the tools that are available to you. I go back to the days when we called them RDAs, then we called them CDAs, and now we call them CRAs. I think the state legislature needs to have something to do once in a while, so they're always working to reformat and redirect some of these incentive programs. I say that kindly, fond of our state legislators who do great work. But CRAs, one that's relatively new is a transportation reinvestment zone, a TRZ. And we're working with a little bit soft in the process right now, but Cache County, Nibley, and Hiram, if we want to keep it on the Cache Valley Loop, some of the development out there by the Miller operations and the butter operations facility, all of a sudden the name skips me, but there's an opportunity to do some transportation improvements there that would involve both of those municipalities as well as the county. And they could utilize this transportation reinvestment zone in that process so that they could all share in the cost as well as in the wealth of the development that would come to them by improving some of the transportation in and out of that area along that Hiram and Nibley line. And some others that are also available. Opportunity zones, I should have done my homework. Ryan, maybe you can help me. Where are opportunity zones in Cache County? Something else to look at as well. But I think I'm 100% certain that you do not have an opportunity zone in Providence, Utah.
I'm not aware of one.
Nope, I don't think you do. But I'll check the map. If I need to straighten myself out, I'll let you know. And there's some other programs that the Governor's Office of Economic Development puts forth. The EdTIF, the Economic Development Tax Increment Financing Program. Again, another very conservative program that's post-performance, that dollars are only given at the creation of jobs and the creation of successful implementation of a project. You see no cash delivered up front in any incentive programs in the state of Utah. And also Go-Ed rural programs that primarily benefit some of our more rural areas. Some of those even would fit Cache County if you really dug deeply enough. Finding an approach, your approach to incentives, once again, I say they're on a case by case. Determine if the project is beneficial for your community. Then this quote that just kind of helps you put it in perspective. We're going to look at a project that are fit for our community and will offer the range of X% of that tax increment for X number of years. You have to determine what the baseline is of the tax of a specific property. Take the increment that's going to be generated from that property based upon the new development. You're giving away a portion of that increment as part of that incentive that would drive that development. And it's up to you then as the mayor, city council, to determine what that would be. We also, knowing that I have 15 minutes here, which I'm about done, we could spend another 2 hours looking at a matrix that one of our research guys had put together that talks about very specifically how you plug some numbers into the model to see how that might work out for you. That's for a 2-hour session sometime, Mayor and Ryan, not tonight. There it is, creating explicit directives, pretty much the same thing that I've said. We value this particular project such that this is what we're going to do to offer that support for the program. And with that, I saw Mr. Speth get up and leave. I think that maybe we've hit the end of our patience. So with that, any questions that you have of me, and Ryan, I hope that this is what you were hoping to see. Again, no decisions made. This is simply an introductory conversation talking about the incentive process, somewhat complicated, somewhat time consuming, and but something that may be a benefit going forward. Any questions?
I just want to say thanks to Alan and thanks for Ryan. Ryan, I know I've had questions about this before and I appreciate the background. So I really appreciate you sharing this information with us. I think our city is definitely at the point that we need to start considering these things and these programs. It's something that might not have been on our radar 5 years ago, but it definitely needs to happen now. So.
Right. And if you look down at the Macy's project, and if I understand that a number of years ago, if it wasn't a retail incentive that spurred the Macy's project, that then serves as the catalyst to bring others. And with each one of those new retail establishments that brings a few more retail dollars to you, once again, you're building on that momentum. Success begets success, but you got to start somewhere. And maybe it's an economic development incentive tool that would help drive your next stage of development.
Alan, do you have any advice or counsel on, we have a number of, commercial property, highway district or regular district property that's zoned that way currently that we've been preserving. And I think we experience some pressures now to balance, development and housing versus that commercial and the changing landscape of commercial and manufacturing, everything else. Just advice or counsel. I mean, I've seen so many of those come up, and I'm trying to have a long-term view to think, where are we going to have, commercial development and manufacturing? So just thoughts on that.
There's that vision thing again. Where's that piece of property? Where is that piece of acreage? Where does it sit? What type of development would work well there? Would it be a good place for a manufacturing operation? Would it be some flex space, some entrepreneurial space for some companies, smaller companies? So I think that's you looking at those specific parcels, determining what a particular plan would be. Maybe that's another closed door session, a work session that you could start to brainstorm. Maybe bring in some developers, local or distant. We'd be more than happy to send a developer up that would say, hey, this is what we've seen in other parts of the world that they've used a similar piece of property like that. I was on the phone with a developer here tonight, called me on another matter, and we started brainstorming some things that he could possibly do in some other rural parts of the state. Bring somebody up, but I'd be more than happy. I'd always love to come home to Cache Valley. Let me come home once in a while, give me an excuse, and let's go kick the dirt and say, what could you do? And then would an incentive be a tool that you would want to use?
So Alan,
or that along.
Alan,
Ryan.
I don't know that this is what Councilman Polson was referring to, but I would like to see is we have pressure that there isn't enough available housing in Cache Valley. So if we open up all of our commercial to high density housing, it'd fill up pretty quick, because I think it would fill up as fast as we allowed it to. But the question comes is, do we hold that back for commercial and then incentivize commercial to come? Or do you just open it up to high density housing and say, the heck with it, this is the new normal, for back using that COVID term. So talk maybe a little bit about where you see high density housing coming in and creeping into commercial area. Maybe that, I don't know, Josh, is that kind of what you were looking at?
I think Ryan, you're always better with words than I am, but I think there's a real crux there, and that's a balance. So it's definitely something we're seeing. So good. I agree with your question.
I appreciate the clarification. Ryan, council, mayor, you're not alone in this housing problem statewide. What is the number? I think we're 56 in the Salt Lake Valley. I think we were 56,000 housing units short right now. There is not enough housing. Cities then restrict zoning, and of course, it's always the fight. You face it, you deal with it. I recently had the opportunity, was even asked to fill a vacancy on my city council. I live in Taylorsville, and I opted not to, because I sat and listened to our city council meetings enough times. I thought, do I want to subject myself to the pain and the agony that you folks deal with on the multifamily housing fight? Now I'm becoming a little bit political, but I was hoping to actually see a smile or two out of a couple of you. But
I'll take off the table. I was going to offer you my position in Providence, but I don't think you'd take it. So there we go.
I don't want it. I don't want it. Ultimately, and Ryan, you nailed it on the head. If you solve the one problem and you open everything up to multifamily housing, you make 50% of the people happy. But on the other hand, what are you going to do down the road to provide the tax base and create a tax base that provides for those services for that additional housing? We all know that property tax doesn't pay for all the groceries. We need something more than that. We need a viable commercial base. And so I think that's the challenge you face, is where do you do your part in this community, in this valley, to help meet the needs of some of that dire multifamily housing shortage, plus take care of your long-term future. And that's creating a tax base that's going to sustain you for the long haul.
Alan, are you familiar with, I appreciate that. What I've been wondering is if there are some key ratios that we can abide by in terms of acreage and density and commercial development needed. Or, I just haven't seen anything like that, but I wish there were some guiding ratios. If we were a company and we're looking at our liquidity, we'd look at a, debt asset ratio and other things like that. But what is the one that guides, development? Where are they?
Okay. They're not in my head, but I know good people that know those things.
I'll take a shot at some of that, Josh. They teach us that a stable government runs by separating three legs of your tax stool. If you have your property tax at the same amount as your sales tax, so if you don't have one leg longer than the other, and then charges for services, those are your three main legs. And in a down economy, property tax will get you through, but sales tax will kill you. In an up economy, sales tax will come in first, and but your property tax is your balance. It will stay relatively the same, but your sales tax is times you grow in your up times and you suffer in your down times. So when I went to Roosevelt first, they had a 30% decline in their sales tax revenue, and that was tough. So you want to balance between those three: property tax, sales tax, and charges for services. If you can get that three-legged stool, then you balance all the rest of your revenue, and that becomes a big piece.
I agree with that on the books. What I'm looking for is an additional translation component, and that's to take those those needed revenue streams and translate that into a land use policy, right, that provides that 3-3-3 ratio and is relatively stable. So
and that's good for Alan to comment on. Go ahead, Alan.
My first phone call will be to James Wood, who's at the Kim Gardner Policy Institute that I've worked with for 30 years. He's probably the key housing land use professional in the state of Utah. So, okay, Jim, give me some of those numbers that we have a community struggling. How do we find that balance? What works? Where are those ratios? How does that really fit? Let me do some homework.
So then I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay. So then we also get told, that we need rooftops in order to bring in businesses. So then there's also that balance too.
Right. Absolutely. Everybody wants a Target. Everybody wants a Chick-fil-A. Everybody wants a whatever it is that you're missing. And we go to the ICSC show in Las Vegas every year. It wasn't held this year because of COVID, obviously, but in essence, you can beg all you want, you can plead all you want that Cache Valley is the most wonderful place, but they have their statistics, they have their data points, and rooftops. It's rooftops and its incomes. We use Esri data that shows all of those numbers. That's a tool data source that we utilize. But you're absolutely right. You can plead all you want, but it's rooftops that matter. And that's within a 5-mile radius, 10-mile radius. And so that would actually expand beyond Providence City's boundaries too, as those retailers are looking at a bigger scope than that. But you're absolutely right. Some of those things, those data points drive decisions. So are you saying, well, then we better put in a whole lot more houses? I'm not sure that's the means to the end. I'm not sure that you could put in enough houses then to justify the target. Then you've given away all your land on a hope that that still wouldn't materialize, if that makes any sense.
I have a question for you, Alan.
Yes, sir.
Along the Wasatch Front, we are limited in certain types of land, transportation corridors, and so forth. Retail businesses do well along good transportation corridors and where people have access to retail. Here in our area, as we find that Logan City to the north, it puts in the business that seems to draw in their sales tax, and we seem to be building the rooftops so that we can supply Logan City. And so my thoughts are, is it time we think differently about rooftops? Do we go to a rooftop that is multi-story? Because of our limited land, do we look like, okay, so I was in Europe for a while, there's multi-story rooftops, and they have people and they have businesses. And to give up your main corridors, your main sales tax generation areas for low-level rooftops, I guess, so to speak. But no, is it time we rethink our rooftops? We got to have businesses along the corridor. Is it time we rethink the rooftops?
It's a great question for you. I think I'll just ask your same question. Is it time for you to rethink that? And that's where you have to, that's why they're paying you the big bucks, Mr. Spath.
Oh.
To come up with the right answers. And I think that we face that, you see developers that we see more and more multifamily housing going up in Salt Lake, in the Salt Lake Valley area, simply because we're running out of space down there too. So you got to come up with a different strategy. We can no longer have quarter acre, half acre lots. It just doesn't pencil. You also see some developments where you see that European approach, if you want to use that, where you've got some retail below and some residential above. So it creates more of a walkable, livable, sustainable type community. That's totally foreign to, I think, the old Cache Valley mindset that you get in the car and you drive into town to get your groceries. Well, are we forward thinking? Are you going to look at things a little bit differently? And can Providence do some of that walkable, livable, sustainability community type of development? Does it work? That's a good question.
Thank you.
Mayor Ryan, I expended my time a long time ago, but if you got, I appreciate the questions. I hope that was useful, but we're more than happy to help any way we can.
I think it was useful. I think if they have questions, they can send them to me. We can forward and coordinate efforts. And so anyway, if you do get some information from your point of contact at the Gardner Institute, we'd love to hear that. I think that would be good information.
I'll make that call and I'll talk with Jim, see what we come up with. Thanks very much for the time tonight. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to come home to Cache Valley.
Thank you.
One comment on this issue for the council. Ryan and I have had the conversation about the trade-offs between multifamily housing, lower density housing, commercial businesses of various types. I think it'd be worthwhile someday for the council to have a discussion with Ryan where he goes where the tax revenue comes from, go through some of the numbers, go through some examples. I think it'll help the council understand and reconcile some of these decisions we're going to need to make and balance between commercial, retail, non-retail commercial, and residential. When it comes to industrial manufacturing, I don't see much of that happening. When it comes to incentives, we've had Macy's, and I think Scarlett could probably tell us that went on for 5 years, 7 years. That's ended. And I think Macy's is the only incentive we've ever considered here in Providence. I do know we have a lot of interest in businesses locating here in Providence. We hear about that, both sides of the highway.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Very
you.
sorry, we could talk for hours about this topic, but I know we need to move on.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We had two short items we need to cover. One is to appoint a representative for the city, Resolution 0362020, water stock representative for Blacksmith Fork Irrigation. Providence Council will consider for adoption a resolution appointing Janelle Seeley as a designated water stock representative for the Blacksmith Fork Irrigation Board. Currently, Brent Freese is our city representative. He is willing to serve, but he came to see Ryan and I, and his son is graduated from high school. He has told his employer in prior years, no, I'm not moving. That excuse has gone away, and his second son is about ready to move out of the house. So he and his wife are looking at the possibility of moving, and it might be very soon that he's asked to move back east to one of the other plants for the company he works for. So he came to us. Fortunately, one of our council members came to us also and volunteered her services to the city to represent us on the Blacksmith Board, and that's Janelle. I told Janelle it'd probably be a slam dunk if she volunteered, so she volunteered anyway.
Would you like a motion, Mayor?
I'd like a motion. We can have some discussion. Janelle can make a few comments if you'd like. But I do need a motion to consider a resolution appointing Janelle Seeley to be our city representative.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 036-2020, appointing Janelle Seeley as the city's designated water stock representative for the Blacksmith Fork Irrigation Board.
Motion from Councilman Paulson. Do I have a second? Second from Councilwoman Kirk. Further discussion?
Mayor, we did get a comment on this.
That's right, we did.
And this comment is from Todd Hammond. He's a board member of Providence Blacksmith Fork Irrigation. The board members for Providence Blacksmith Fork Irrigation Company are elected by the shareholders. They are not appointed. Brent Freese was elected as a board member, but at the time was also a city councilman. When his or any other board position becomes open for re-election, names are presented and then voted upon by the shareholders at our annual meeting. Brent was elected to the board as a representative for the city shares, so he or any other person that the city wants to present as a possible candidate needs to be voted on as any other person up for election. Just to make a clarification, we had to create a secondary water stock designated representative because the way the bylaws read for Blacksmith Fork, I think they read very similar for Spring Creek. Fred, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they call out that we have to have designated representatives. So Brent Freese was appointed as Providence City's designated representative. As a shareholder, we sent in a nomination that his name be included on the ballot, and then he was voted in. That's how that happened. This resolution is not written to put Janelle on the ballot. The resolution is written just to appoint her as the secondary water stock designated representative. That's a position we created by ordinance. And then the intent would be that we would, if that's who we appoint, then we will immediately email that person's name to Blacksmith Fork and ask them to put that on their ballot. Unless they've changed their bylaws, and it doesn't sound like they have.
So it would seem that our timing is appropriate. We are a little over 30 days from when Blacksmith Fork's annual shareholder meeting would be, the first week in December. So I think Scarlett is absolutely right. The timing is right. City's council is going through its steps to appoint a representative so that that information can get to the board, and so they can include that when they send out their agenda. That is required about 30 days prior to their annual shareholder meeting. So I think the timing is right. So we have a motion on the table.
A question on the motion. Does that need to be amended as stated then, and drop the just water stock representative for the Blacksmith Fork Irrigation Company rather than board?
And I would question if by matter of procedure, I read the resolution as it's written on the agenda. If we amend the resolution to something that's not stated on the agenda, have we violated some sort of protocol here?
The packet does not, if you look through the packet, it does not say Blacksmith Fork Water Company. It says the secondary water stock designated representative. So I mean,
I'm just reading up.
There's some inconsistency there between the agenda.
Yeah, I'm just reading off the agenda page. Yeah.
Yeah, and it does say board
on the agenda. So to Scarlett's point, the council amended the city code to add a water stock representative. And it's generic. It did not specify one company or the other.
Your question, Josh, as long as how you vote on the resolution, the motion on the resolution needs to be clear, but the wording on the agenda, we don't need to get too far afield from it. Our hope is that she will get elected to it, but I think it'll be fine as far as go ahead and just approving the resolution as written, where it says as the secondary water stock designated representative.
Okay, so I will just clarify that then, as long as we don't break procedure, that my motion is to approve resolution 036/2020 as written.
As written?
The resolution.
Because I'm reading, the resolution is different than the agenda. The resolution is written, doesn't say anything about the board. To Janelle's point, it just says representative.
Okay.
I'm good with that. We have an amended motion then, right?
So we Carrie had my second.
I'm a member of the board.
Right. We have Kathleen Alder here, who is a board member.
And I'm also planning zoning. And I'm also a shareholder. So that clarify anything. If you wanted me to be the representative, I could do that. Just to throw a wrench in there. It doesn't matter to me.
I don't know if we can do that. We did cover that briefly.
We can't hear what's being said.
Sorry, Christina.
I'm right into the microphone.
No, I'm Kathleen. Kathleen is
Kathleen.
not. Kathleen informed us that she's a member of the Blacksmith Fork, Providence Blacksmith Fork Irrigation Board. She's also the Planning Commission Chairman. She also holds shares in Blacksmith Fork. She said if it would be,
If it helps clarify anything or help anything, I could be that representative.
We have any kind of a conflict?
I don't know. Well, we may or may not. That's completely up to the city council if they wanted to change, and you can certainly change who you appoint as your water stock designated representative. One thing that it was written in the ordinance, it was written specifically open-ended with the thought that the same person may be able to serve on both boards if at some point in time Spring Creek Water Company changed the way they allow nominations for their board members, or if they change designation for their board members. So that's why it was written open-ended. The city's first thought was they would just appoint one person, and that person would serve on whatever irrigation board they were elected to. And they, unless there's a conflict between the two companies or three, because there is another one that we do hold stock in, they would serve on multiple boards if that's the way it was written. But it doesn't have to. But the point is, we can't appoint them to the board. We're just appointing them as the water stock designated representative. Kathleen's already serving on the board, so there would be no need for her to be elected this year, right? You're not up for election, are you?
I am, because I filled in for somebody who left. And so my name will be on the ballot.
I was comfortable. I was just gonna say, I have the utmost respect for Kathleen. I appreciate what she does for planning and zoning, and not just that, but she's actually involved with the community. I personally would be most comfortable having having an elected rather than appointed official from the council on the boards. And I don't know what Spring Creek's are. We just recently acquired Spring Creek water shares from my mother-in-law. So I would be eligible under the current board rules to serve on Spring Creek's board if you know I was nominated and approved.
I agree. I think it should be an elected official. I would echo your sentiments exactly. I think Kathleen's fabulous.
That's a council choice.
And I support it as long as it's not me.
You don't own a share.
Can I make a
We
comment?
have a motion on the table to approve Janelle Seelig. That's where we're at right now.
Well,
Further discussion. We need to vote on this motion. I mean, it doesn't mean we can't go some other direction. It doesn't mean we can't amend the motion.
I think we submit Janelle's name and see how it goes.
Did Brent have a comment he wanted to add?
I did. I don't want to take more time, but Josh mentions that he could serve on the board. Sure, he can serve on the board. He owns shares. We're talking about a designated representative here, and we are trying to make the changes necessary to also allow a designated representative, a family trust representative, so forth, and to serve, to be eligible to serve on the board. Ryan or Josh would be eligible to serve on the board if he were elected. So that is a good point, in other words. But Josh, unless he was appointed by the city, would only represent the shares that he owns and would not speak for the city unless he's appointed by the city to speak for the city shares.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
Right. Yeah.
So coming back to that, whoever I think this is still a necessary step, that you appoint somebody to be the designated representative of the city shares, and they would then be an eligible person to serve on the board if so elected. My thoughts.
May I think the other thing that it does, and I don't have the ordinance pulled up in front of me, but I'm quite sure as the designated water stock, as the water stock designated representative, even if they're not on the board, they're the ones that would take the city's vote and can vote the shares for the city. So they would get that information from the city council, but they're the person that would vote that. We don't have to go through the proxy thing or anything the way this is written. So not only are they eligible to serve on a board, but they're the person that would vote the city shares. So even if they're not elected to a board, they would still vote the city shares at their whenever a shareholder meeting was called. They would be the person that would attend and represent the city.
That is true, Scarlett.
To that point, I really do think it should be an elected member of the council that votes for the city's shares.
Ryan, anything you'd like to add?
I would simply add, and not that I put myself in this one, because I think Janelle, she has my full support on this board. I would add that elected or your elected representative, which I am your hired employee. I would throw in that I am probably in that mix with you. If you want to choose somebody out of your elected, but I wouldn't extend it to the general populace. Somebody that is in your executive group, your elected city manager, even a public works director. I think you open it up to those, but I think you do need somebody that is highly involved with the city on a regular and ongoing basis. That's what I would add.
I would support what Ryan said, because the problem is timing of the period served, because city councilmen serve 4 years and board of directors are not always on the same schedule. It might be that a elected official's term ends and they're still the representative of the shares until someone else is appointed. It would be wise. Continuity is wonderful. And so I would also like to extend it to someone who, like Ryan or Rob or something like that, that has an ongoing position with the city, not only elected, but I would like to see it expanded beyond that.
Just my 2 cents. I think the more city officials elected and otherwise that understand water and irrigation water, the better. I know Kathleen already does. Janelle's had her head in this for a while. I think it's a great idea.
Yes.
I would support Janelle, but I don't have a vote. I'm sorry.
And Janelle's really smart.
She is. And she's an engineer too.
Well, thanks, you guys. Nice
And
work.
she drinks water too. So
I do drink water, and I like it to be clean.
And we have great water.
No floaties, please.
All right.
I will keep. We've got a motion on the table, and I don't know if Carrie seconded my amended.
She did.
Yes, second.
So we have a motion on the table. Can I call for a vote, or do we want to discuss this first?
I think we've got to vote.
Let's vote. All right. All in favor of resolution 036-2020, appointing Janelle Seeley as our city representative for water stock, signify by saying aye.
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 Nay? Hearing no nays, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for volunteering. We appreciate your interest in serving.
Happy to help.
Shall we move on? Planning Commission bylaws, item number 5, resolution 038-2020. Providence City Council will consider for adoption resolution amending the Planning Commission bylaws, section 3.2, by allowing the chair to serve consecutive terms. Kathleen Alder, our Planning Commission chair, is here. You want to give us outline on this? Reason for the change?
Well, the reason for the change is continuity, I guess. But as we looked at the bylaws, when it came time, the chair is elected every year in July. Yes. Okay. And so this year, as we had the election and we looked at the bylaws, it was very clear that the same person could not serve a consecutive term. And so we discussed it and decided that it would be okay for consecutive terms for 3. So it would be a 3-year opportunity if the chair consented and if the rest of the commission decided that that's how they wanted it to go. But we felt like a 1-year stint probably wasn't enough continuity to
Well,
keep the commission going.
Well, the other thing is you were appointed, you served
I was
the
appointed,
remainder
yes.
of Harry's term, so that was not a full year.
Right.
So even
But the way
though-
it was worded, it sounded like that I would not be able to continue serving. So we are asking for your approval to make that amendment to our bylaws.
I think it's a great idea. I think if someone's willing to serve longer, I think especially meeting once a month, it's hard to even get in the swing of it.
And the
you know?
terminology and all the stuff that goes on.
And to become confident and so
knowledgeable.
I think it's a grand idea.
I need a motion. Need a motion from the council to approve
I'll make the motion.
resolution from Councilwoman. I have
Item.
a second from
Oh,
another
okay.
council member.
I'll second that, Josh.
Second from Councilman Paulson. Change to the bylaws, allowing a chair to serve. Further discussion? All in favor?
Just-
Oh, Janelle, is that you?
I just was wondering, is the planning commission term 2 years when they're appointed? Is that,
3-year term.
what's that?
It's 3 years.
That's how long your appointment is, 3 years?
That's how long a commission member's appointment is 3 years.
Okay.
The chairman is elected annually.
Right.
Why?
Yeah. I just couldn't remember how long the term was, but that's all. I'm ready to vote.
I got one quick question. Consecutive terms, that's pretty open-ended. Is there any recommended limitation on that?
No more than 3 consecutive terms.
Can that be amended to put in there?
It does say a chair may serve no more than 3 a chair may serve no more than 3 consecutive terms.
Okay. All right, I see it. Very good. I'm ready to vote.
Ready to vote? All in
Yes.
favor, signify by saying aye.
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 I
Nay? Hearing no nays, it's unanimous. Thank you. Move on. Item number 6, resolution 037-2020, agreement Providence City Council will consider for adoption. Resolution approving an agreement between Providence City and Spring Creek Water Company. It says amended 10/16/2020. Is that what's that make reference to?
The agenda was amended on the 16th. We didn't know for sure. I put the agenda out on the 15th, and then the next morning I found out that we had to add an item. So that's just showing that that was the date it was added to the agenda.
All right, so we have a resolution. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 037-2020.
Resolution from Councilwoman Seeley. Do I have a second?
second.
Second from Councilwoman Burke. Discussion. We have a letter from, we have an email from Ralph Daniels. Scarlett, you want to read that?
Yes. This is from Ralph Daniels. He says, I want to thank Councilwoman Carrie Kirk, Councilwoman Janelle Seeley, City Manager Ryan Snow, and Spring Creek Water Company Board Member Rod Wallace for the many hours that have been put into coming up with this agreement. We have met twice a month for 2 hours each time since March. There were a couple of times I thought we had reached a point we could not get past, but thanks to patience and perseverance and compromise on both sides, we came up with an agreement that I can give my whole heart to. The members of the committee are all aware, and I want to make the rest of the city council aware that the item number 3, and this is talking about in the agreement, not on the agenda. The item number 3 in the agreement where it says will make what changes are needed in the articles of incorporation. Changes in the articles of incorporation can only be made by the shareholders, but I think it needs to be done and will do all in my power to accomplish this task. Thanks again, thanks to this committee for all your time and hard work. Ralph Daniels.
Ralph, if you're listening, appreciate your email and your kind words.
And to Ralph, who
Yes,
also
thank you. A lot of time has been gone in, and I appreciate those thoughts, Ralph.
crunched those numbers 1,000 times, maybe more,
Yeah,
This did plan.
as did Ryan.
a lot of time went in. We appreciate it. Does anyone have questions?
Comments? Brian?
I'm fully supportive of the agreement. We've met with their board. They've approved it. They've signed it. It's coming to this council to approve. And I think Josh or the Janelle and Carrie and Rod and Ralph, all that have taken time on this. It has taken a lot of time, and I think we've come a long way. But I think this is the right time to move forward on this one and move to our next steps. So appreciate everybody's work on this one.
Brent, go ahead.
I'm excited to finally see an agreement that will allow the city to utilize as much water as possible. Water is such a coveted resource, and I really think that it's been a long time coming, and I'm happy to see it happen. I had a reservation about item number 3 because of what Ralph stated, is the fact that it is a change in the government of Spring Creek, and it is included in the agreement. It isn't just an agreement between two parties with item number 3 in there. It stretches to the fact that the shareholders of Spring Creek must approve a change in their government in order for item 3 to have validity. Now, the last thing I want to see happen is if that doesn't happen at our annual meeting, that this end this agreement, or that it would be a point of litigation some other time down the road that Spring Creek couldn't make good on item number 3. I expressed that at our board meeting. Ryan was there. He knows my concerns. I just hope, and I signed it, but I do not want that item number 3 to be a showstopper for the agreement to move forth, that the city can use the water as we can give them as much as we possibly can allow. Now, that's my only reservation. Now, I did sign the agreement, but I have to express that because I really don't want this to be a showstopper. I want the city to use the water. We want the city to use the water. I just don't want another council, another mayor, another period of time come back and say Spring Creek couldn't make good on this, therefore this is a showstopper. I have to express that.
I think it's a good point, and I think there's other things in this that we're moving forward on good faith, that the city will do their best to meet the agreement, and I think the water company too will do their best. They'll, you know, the first step is to put someone, you know, to make the vote in December and to have the vote and see where the shareholders stand and to advocate for the change. And I think that all of this is like, this is what we agreed to work on and that we're moving forward in good faith.
So Brett makes a good point. I think it comes down to a matter of trust. Certainly, we all know a subsequent council could come along and decide to change things. Likewise, a subsequent Spring Creek board could come along and decide they have a different outlook on this agreement as well. So hopefully what this does is starts everything off on a positive note, on the right foot. Everybody wants to say that Utah is a desert. I say Utah is a desert except Cache Valley. We're blessed with an abundance of water. And probably the city that's more blessed than any other city in Cache Valley is Providence.
It's all in the name.
What's that?
Providence.
Council, anything else? Ryan?
Oh,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I don't have anything else. Go ahead and vote. Sorry.
All right. All in favor of approving the agreement with Spring Creek Water Company, resolution 037, signify by saying aye.
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 Nay, anyone? Hearing none, it's unanimous. Thank you all for all your hard work.
We have a party.
That's what I wanted to say. Are we all going out for chips and salsa now after this meeting?
Janelle.
Happy hour.
Oh, maybe happy hour.
Chips and salsa is about as unsanitary as you can get during COVID.
Oh, Josh, you're such a
Sharing.
party pooper.
All right, we'll get individual shakes then instead. Something exciting. I don't know what it is. It's worth celebrating.
Thanks, Carrie and Janelle.
I too want to thank everybody who put this together. It's such a relief to be able to see the city and Spring Creek work together. I'm just very, very grateful to all of you, the effort you put into it. And thank you very, very much. Very happy about it.
If anyone ever questioned Ryan's value to the city, we all know, don't we?
Yep. Thanks, Ryan.
Yes, definitely.
Speaking of
1,000 times, yes.
Ryan's anniversary is coming up in December. Maybe we'll have a party for Ryan.
He's planning to have his own party.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate working for Providence City. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Ryan. All right, can we move on? Legislative business items. Item number 1, ordinance 2020-011 rezone. This is legislative item. The Providence City Council will consider for adoption an ordinance changing the zone for parcel number 02-096-0054 from commercial general district to multifamily medium located in general area 50 North Gateway Drive, containing approximately 3.21 acres. Does everyone know where this parcel is? Anyone not know where this parcel is? Has everyone had a chance to get out of your car and walk this parcel?
We have. Yep.
Well, so far we basically would be admitting trespassing there, but I've all been by it. Yeah. Haven't walked on it. Yeah.
All right, so I need a motion on this ordinance for rezone. We can have it.
Before we make the motion, I need to do my disclosure that my husband works for that company.
Yes, thank you, Christine. Motion from the council.
I'll make a motion. that we approve item number 1, ordinance 2020-011, the rezone of parcel 02-096-0054 from commercial general district to multifamily medium density located in the general area of 50 North Gateway Drive.
Motion, Councilman Beth, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion, second from Councilwoman Kirk. Discussion, we have a representative here from Visionary Homes who's worked on this development. Ned Steele, he's here to answer questions.
No, just taking off my mask so I can do that. We had great discussion.
You don't have to breathe your own air.
That's right. We had great discussion with the Planning Commission during the study items, and I don't know if a lot of that was conveyed on to the City Council, but again, yeah, I'm here to answer any questions, try and clear up any concerns that anybody might have in regards to this 3.2 acre development.
I watched the discussion from the Planning Commission on YouTube, and I thought it was very interesting. I appreciated the increase of green space. The most unique piece of your proposed project, I think, is the live work units. I actually drove past some of those in North Logan today. I'm interested to see how that would benefit the city. It's unique. It's interesting.
Will you help me understand? I have heard of work live units, and I know they're building a bunch in Logan, but will you help me to understand?
Yeah, sure. And it's a fairly new thing to me too.
Mm-hmm.
The very first product that we have as Visionary Homes engaged in this is a project called Indigo. And I don't know if you've seen the elevations that we submitted that show what that project looks like, but it's a 3-story building where the bottom floor serves as a garage for the residents on the 2nd and 3rd floor. But the additional 1st floor is an office space, a retail space, whatever your code would allow. You know, and it's interesting that your multifamily medium density code allows quite a varied array of land uses, including, you know, some business and retail, a lot of commercial type uses. You know, I understand there's a hesitancy for municipalities to give up commercial. When it's in the plan, it's being slated to be zoned that way. And so this, in our mind, this is a way of, it's a hybridization of the commercial zone where, and it also takes into consideration the changes that we see in the economy as it relates to commercial and the way that we work and live. You know, even in just your everyday business, you have people that are staying home to work. COVID has really exacerbated that. And so these work live units, they provide an opportunity for, it's very European. We were talking about this year earlier, where there's that bottom floor becomes a business or retail space and residents above that. So I don't know, we submitted with our packet. Have you seen this, Carrie?
I haven't.
This particular picture. And I don't know where the camera is to show
You
that
know,
too.
I was
but-
wondering that myself, because I loved it when Ryan showed the speaker
You walk out in
last
front?
month.
the podium.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay, so these are ones that we're building. And so they're 3 stories.
Oh, but they can't hear you now. You have
Oh,
to be talking into a mic.
Here.
Here,
I can hear him. I can't see.
I can
Sorry.
hear him, but
I
you need to get closer. The picture's kind of dark.
Get closer to the camera.
Get
So
closer.
these are 3 stories, and there's garages in the back, and then each one of these units would have access to the
And that's-
front that
this
would
is the
serve
back.
as the retail function.
Get a little closer.
If you've seen the one in North Logan, they actually share their own sidewalk,
There's the back.
which is different from the sidewalk on the street. So there's a little bit of a continuity there with the other units, and they're very low traffic. You know, I've hung out at the ones in North Logan. They're still being developed. They're all sold, but they're still being developed. There's only 2 that are right now up and running, and I think I saw another sign on the door today, actually, and I wanted to stop. So it's a new thing in the Cache Valley. they started it off, they're near the Four Seasons, and their price was such that they thought that they would really be able to capture this. It was a new thing. You see it in other locales. But they had trouble with financing, getting financing. So once they figured out that financing helped, they all just blew out and sold out. And so it'll be really interesting to see, as far as Visionary Homes is concerned, the two areas in the valley that would probably serve or be the least risky for this type of product, where you have a little more urban feel, you've got the population center. It allows a little bit of a retail commercial feel that's walkable and it's low impact. And I think it's just fortuitous that your zone, your multifamily medium zone, allows that. So I think, well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing that. There are parking, you see the parking in the back, there's double loaded garages for the units. And we've also supplied some additional guest parking for those. And then you also do allow parking on Gateway. And so that's the product. Whether it's called a work live or a live work. We've actually showed a floor plan.
Live first.
Chairwoman Kathleen Elder, would you mind showing
Vanna.
Vanna? That's a haircut. The floor plan, if you look at the very bottom, and I don't know if that comes through on the computer mirrored, and so you're trying to read it upside down and backwards.
Those are the cars.
But it shows family room on the bottom floor behind the garage. And that's a label as if that whole project was to be used solely as a residence. You would have an additional family room or, an extra space downstairs. The entire living quarters, the common area is on the second floor. So you see the stairs are accessible from the garage, so you can bypass that office, retail space in the front, go right to the upstairs where your common area is. There's a guest bedroom on the common area floor, and then all the bedrooms are upstairs.
How many square feet?
It's right there on the paper. I think it's about
2130. 2130 square feet.
So they're a little bit bigger than our typical two-story townhome, which we've planned to have in the rest of that development. But I really think this would be kind of fun.
And any idea of the work live in North Logan, what businesses are?
Yes, so far I visited two of them. There was a Com for Care, and Com for Care. I think it's short for Comfort for Care. It's kind of what they do is they specialize in organizing and administrating their home nursing services. And so in that a particular office, there's just two employees sitting in that front room, and that's just all they use. And they're actually the person that owns the building is leasing that to them. And another one that we visited was called Hydrology, and it's a beauty salon. There's a couple of chairs in there to cut hair, color hair. There's a kind of a retail feel on the side where they're selling beauty products, but very low impact, very small feel. In looking at this particular site, it's a little bit small for just to put in a box in there to try to do some retail. Right now, there's a lot of empty retail buildings sitting nearby. And I feel like that this particular use.
It's 401 square feet on that.
In that one floor? Yeah,
on the
there'd be
bottom
about
floor.
400 to 500 that would be utilized as far as that commercial fit would be. Thank you, Ms. Halder, for that. Does anybody have any questions on the floor plan? This particular property, in looking at this, we really do feel like the highest and best use of the city, despite all the discussion about commercial and residential, to be what we've laid out. It's substantially different than what we've built to the south. We've heard some concerns about the tightness, the density that the Providence Gateway has brought, and still I've reserved my full judgment of the project because I don't think it's quite finished yet. They're still building there, but in this lower density, 12 units to the acre on this 3.2 acres, we would help alleviate some of that potential density. So, especially with that open space park, it would help join us together. That's kind of been our thought process behind the project and the design, trying to be sensitive to a commercial aspect, as well as alleviating potential, that density. Looking at to make it little less tight for the residences there. The residences in this project would be joined and integrated with the HOA to the south, and they'd be able to take advantage of the amenities there.
Can I ask about the HOA?
Yes.
Is that a separate HOA than the Gateway project, or would it be like another phase of Gateway?
Yes, they would just be added to and integrated into the overall HOA. They would come
And what
in
is that fee?
You know, I don't know what that fee is, right?
I've heard it's $150 a month. Does that sound right?
That sounds pretty close. That sounds pretty close. I just put together a budget for a project in Nibley, and the townhomes and the condos are right at 170 budget. So that sounds pretty good if it's 150. You know,
and what's the price point for the units?
You know, that's a great question too. It still remains to be seen. You know, in my conversations with sales department, I was able to get out of them that they're looking at right around what the townhome prices. They're looking very similar to what we were able to sell the towns of the south, which are also about right between 240 and 250 would be the townhome price. Condos just over 200,000, and the work live units. They didn't want to give me a number on those, but I think it's going to be around 280.
And
what was that last one? I'm sorry, that broke up. The work live units.
280, 279 was the number they gave me. But again, there is a little bit more value there when you add a potential commercial component to that, because, you know, there's benefit there to be able to, you know, if you notice the ones on North Logan, they've actually got a little bit of a storefront feel where there's a space there to put some signage, you know, and that would be something that would be beneficial as well, you know, to promote that work live unit on that bottom floor. And I feel like in this area, it wouldn't detract from what's there. It would be kind of a good transition from, you got a church to the north. I don't know if that's a stake center, if that's just a regular building there to the north of this piece on Gateway. You've got the school just to the east, and quite a bit of school. And you guys actually have a little piece of ground just to the east as well, that the school takes advantage of. And then of course, that high density housing to the south. I feel like this would be a great transition as far as what we've laid out in terms of townhomes and then those work live units along Gateway. That I feel comfortable asking the city council to change that zone. I feel like that wouldn't be any negative to the council at this stage in your growth and the need, the demand that's there for housing. Despite the desire to keep and hold on to that commercial, I would hope that you would accept these work live unit component as a consolation to that.
Can you clarify the what's the acreage on the green space again? And I just want to make sure I understand. Work live is someone occupies that space, sleeps there, and they can run a business out of there. Is that right?
Yes. Now the council could limit those work live units in any fashion that they desire. Really, you know, I think your code probably allows that. Typically, that's exactly what happens. Somebody is a professional, let's say, they buy that unit and they use that downstairs as their office. They're an accountant, they're an attorney, they're whatever it is. And they use that office.
They sell CBD oil. Okay.
Sure, it could be. It could be. I mean, if the council wanted to restrict some uses, they could do that. Or it could be, Councilman Paulson, it could be where someone purchases the full unit and leases out that bottom office to some other user, and even leases out the upstairs to a different user. So you could have potentially an investor that would buy that work live unit and lease it out and split it up. That's happened in the North Logan.
Actually, then I don't think our code allows that.
So like I said, if your code doesn't allow some of these potentialities, you restrict it in, you know, but that's how it could be. That's kind of the outside of what could happen. If your code restricts it, then you would say, okay, you have to own it.
Scarlett, just to clarify though, if our code restricted it now, but there's an activity, they'd be grandfathered in if we changed the code. Is that right? We couldn't, that code would function retroactively. Let's say there was an activity that, this is a total hypothetical and kind of a rabbit trail, but if there was an activity that occurred and we didn't like it, and we put the code in, we wouldn't be able to deny the resident that activity. Is that correct?
That's correct. But
Okay.
I do want to clarify, this is not mixed use.
It's not mixed use. Yes.
That's what my question was for Scarlett.
This mixed
Could you
use,
even have a work-live unit in our current multifamily medium zone?
you can if the owner lives in it, because they can do home businesses in the multifamily medium zone. They can do home businesses as permitted uses. Some of those businesses we would look at as conditional uses, because they fall under the home business category. But on the mixed use side, they could do just exactly the option that Ben was talking about. They could literally split that up and have rent to somebody else in the top and rent out the bottom space, or however that mixed use, that mixed development does it. That mixed development is set up as a commercial building. This one is a residential building as far as our code is concerned. They're doing home businesses in the multifamily.
Okay. So Scarlett, to that point, so it's really no different than, me running a home business out of my residence here. It's just they're configuring the space differently. So a home business, it might be more conducive to running a home business. And just to clarify our code, not all home businesses are required to register for a business license with Providence. Is that correct? And do all of them have to pay sales tax?
That's state code actually, and yes, our code reflects state code. Not all home businesses do have to register with Providence, but if they're doing something that generates sales tax, they are supposed to be remitting sales tax, and they are supposed to be telling them where the point of sale is at, so that the Providence does receive the sales tax dollars. That's the same with with any of our home businesses. If they're doing something that's generating sales tax, they are supposed to be remitting sales tax and
to the state, but they're not required to register as a home business per se, depending on how active that home business is, correct, to their overall income or business activity. Is that there's like a provision for hobbyist businesses or something to that effect?
Yes, that's the way the state code is. They have to have an impact above and beyond what a normal residential, what would be normal for that neighborhood.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, Scarlett, but we can't charge a business license fee. So that's what dominoes to not having one. We could do a business license, we just can't charge a fee. And that's where the state said, if it's a home-based business, you can't charge a fee for certain ones.
Correct. However, if somebody wants us to prepare a business license, and it's one of the businesses that don't qualify or that don't have to have a business license, but if somebody wants us to go through the hoops and prepare the business license for them on a voluntary basis, we do charge them the fee for preparation of the business license. But we don't mandate that they come and pay it. They voluntarily walk in and say, for whatever reason, they need a business license. And we are allowed to charge a fee if somebody's voluntarily coming in on a business that normally wouldn't have a business license. But we can't do it if they don't want to get a business license. We cannot mandate that they pay us a fee to run their business. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I have another question for Scarlett. I'm just wondering what would be the incentive for the builder to choose medium density over mixed use?
Because mixed use is by design. We did not want someone to come in with a multifamily project and say, we're going to do mixed use, and then it ended up a multifamily project without any retail or commercial component to it in the end. So mixed use has percentages that they have to meet. So if they're going to have a retail business, at least 20% of the space in the mixed use development has to be retail. And by the other means, we were looking for rooftops as well. So at least 20% had to be rooftops. So we couldn't have somebody that just came in and said, I'm gonna do mixed use and then put in some type of a professional plaza, and we didn't get retail or rooftops. So that's why mixed use is designed for retail and rooftops. If they want to throw commercial in as far as office space, non-sales tax producing revenue type businesses, they could do that, but they have to have at least 20% rooftops, or at least 20% residential, and at least 20% retail. But in the multifamily residential, the multifamily medium zone, they can operate as home businesses. They're not locked into those. I have to have retail business in my development, or I have to have residential business. They're not locked into those percentages. So these guys get some flexibility. The downside on this side is right now, the way the code is, it would be difficult for somebody to rent the top to someone and then rent the workspace out to a completely different party. If I owned one of those units, but I didn't live there, but my tenant that I rented it to, if they're the one operating the business in the bottom floor, that's great. So I can own it, a renter can live in it, and a renter can operate a home business. Just like if Josh bought a rental home somewhere in Providence, that person that that rented from Josh could run a business as long as it was a qualifying home business. They could run a business out of a rental home, but they had to be the ones doing it. They couldn't live in part of it and rent it to an insurance agent that lives somewhere else. So that's the difference. Home businesses, the person living in the property has to be the person involved in the business. Now, they can hire help. So if you had like an insurance agent and they needed to hire a secretary and they didn't want to hire their spouse to do that, they could hire somebody to come in, but the broker would, or someone in that business would have to live in the unit.
So I see that as a disadvantage of going with this, but maybe the percentages didn't work out. Maybe that 400 square feet just wasn't enough to get the 20%.
Yeah, that's a risk. It's these live work units, they are a bit of a risk.
But that's not a risk to us as the city. I mean, that just makes the developer, the visionary homes have to market harder and do a better job, do a really good job of getting people in there. I like the way that the code's already written, that you can't rent out the top and the bottom. I like leaving it the way it is. Then I just had a request if we could hear from Kathleen and what the Planning Commission's thoughts were.
Thanks, Christina. I was thinking that too. The Planning Commission actually really liked the live work units. I think when you talk about what's the risk, you can't guarantee that somebody will run a business out of that bottom part. They might opt to just live in the whole thing. But we like the concept of someone being able to have a small business. We were concerned about parking, but the question was asked of the people in Logan if parking was a problem, and there's only like 1 or 2 customers that they would have at the most at any time. So that didn't seem to be an issue. But the Planning Commission really liked the concept.
Brent?
Coming back on this discussion of mixed use, I think you have to look at some of the building requirements that a developer would have to get into if it was other than residential and a home business. If you're trying to have mixed use, different occupants, people sleeping above and that sort of thing, that turns into issues with building requirements and that sort of thing. So that changes the the cost of the building right there. So that's something probably why they're looking at what we have rather than going to a full mixed use type thing.
Well, the flexibility, we saw that as a real plus. was the flexibility of somebody to be able to have a business on the first floor if they wanted, or they could just live in it.
I was
a good transition space.
I was surprised when I saw those North Logan ones come. And then I saw the price tag on them. I just kind of didn't think that they would sell, and they did, and I was surprised. So I think they're all sold out, right? They sold quickly.
Yes. Well, and I understand that over here, the project over here is all sold out. The project to the south of us, the
Townhomes are.
the
Condos
townhomes are all, and if you had another 20 today, you could sell them.
Well, it's not just that. So there are no townhomes. There's only 11 townhomes for sale in all of Cache Valley right now. The most of them are in Hiram. There's one in Smithfield and one other one. There's also waiting lists for people at this point too. So I know that I tried to sell some other of those townhomes to some clients of mine, but there was a waiting list and it wasn't an option for them. Same with over in the Vineyard. I think
One of
that
the questions that I was interested in asking Rindlisbacher was, we as a city probably ought to be thinking about defining commercial space, and what is it? You know, what does it mean? Where is it going? What is the state doing to help us kind of define? Because we have developers encroaching on us, trying to take up our commercial space. And, you know, every council meeting, we've got commercial space being asked to be turned into residential space. You know, what does commercial mean anymore? So anyway, just a question that I have. Did you have any more questions for me? Christina, we can't hear you, but we can see your lips moving.
I'm good, thank you.
There you go. Any further discussion, questions for Kathleen, for Ben?
Mayor, there is one other thing, and it may have been pointed out why I stepped out. I apologize if I'm repeating something, but I just think that we need to know that in the general plan, we didn't anticipate changing this to commercial general district. So it is a little bit of a change from what our general plan says, but it did go through all of the proper processes, the public hearings, comment period, all that type of thing. So the council can certainly has the discretion to make that choice if they would like to zone it multifamily medium.
Sure.
One of the things also that we liked about this was there's a significantly more a bigger spot for green space, which doesn't exist in the rest of the development. And it lends itself to possibly having a walking path through the green space. And so we like that aspect of it as well. Connecting with the parks and with the walking trail that goes all the way over to the river. So anyway.
Can I ask a question? I know around the city building, there's been a lot of commercial building development. I think those types of buildings would maybe work in that area of the city. Is there a stronger tax benefit to one over the other? Maybe Ryan can answer that.
You know, I think a good tax question. I do have a chart and I do have some information. I think a tax training would be a good one to put on the agenda. It will take more than just a little explanation, but just keep in mind what you get your taxes from. If you have a townhouse, you get different property taxes than a residential. The infrastructure, the water and sewer infrastructure is a lot less for a multifamily than it is for a traditional lot. You may have, I mean, each of you that have a large home or a large lot, you may have 200 to 300 feet between you and your neighbor of water or sewer line. And we measure that in much, instead of 100 feet, we measured in teens, you know. So there is a definite difference with taxes when we get to multifamily. Part of our sales tax, we do get half of, when the calculation of sales tax comes out, half of it is based on point of sale and half of it is based on population. So we do get some benefit by people living in Providence through the sales tax calculation with the state. So anyway, there's a lot to that. I'm happy to go through and prepare a report on how property tax works and sales tax and those for different types of property if you'd like me to.
So I'm thinking of those office buildings and everything, and I can't think of any of those that are giving us sales tax. You know, we used to have a physical therapist there, dentists, and all of those banks. We don't get any sales tax from them.
So
I don't think that's entirely true because I just, with our new building, we just bought probably $50,000 worth of stuff on Amazon, and that was all taxable and brought sales tax to the city.
You sell it though?
Agreed. Yeah.
No, we
agreed.
purchasing it. We get it.
They purchase it. Dentist's office, you look at all of the supplies that a dentist office goes through in a day and in a visit. A lot of those supplies are purchased, and because it's point of sale and delivered to them, they're paying on that sales tax. So there is an ability for a dentist's office in some of those offices, like Josh talks about. There is more benefit than you might think from even a commercial office that uses products.
So does that
for the business, if it was an insurance agency, someone operated probably would not spend a lot of money on supply items. A dentist office, as Ryan mentioned, is spending not just buying supply items, but the supplies they're buying are pretty pricey. It would be hefty sales tax charge.
The other thing with property tax to consider, every residential gets a 45% property tax exemption. So whether it's multifamily or single family, they get 45% property tax exemption, which a commercial doesn't. So you take the dentist office again, that has high valued equipment, they pay personal property tax on that, as well as the tax on their land. So they're paying actually significant more in their property tax side than maybe a single family resident. But on the other hand, you look at a townhouse or high density housing, each individual unit may be cheaper than a house, but you combine them together and you calculate the property tax on that per acre, it's fairly substantial, more than you might expect it to be.
Can I add, Mayor, that a townhome might generate less than a single family home individually, but when you're putting 12 to an acre, that has a cumulative effect.
That's the point Ryan was making. On a per acre basis, generates far more property tax revenue than multifamily.
There an opportunity for public comment?
There is definitely places for commercial that you need your commercial because you need your people to have jobs. You need to have services that are provided to the residents so that they'll live here. There's a lot of benefit that way, but we shouldn't discount the benefits that other things bring as well. A good balance is needed.
We have a member of the public that would like to weigh in. Give us your name and place of residence.
Sure. Nate Wortham, 605 Fox Ridge Drive in Providence. So as I understand it, the legislative item is simply the rezone.
Yeah.
A plat subdividing property for townhomes would come later, and that's going to second, right? So I have some concerns about the site plan preliminarily, but I think that's a discussion for another day. As we talk about the rezone, I have a couple of concerns. First of all, immediately to the north of this site is the LDS Church building. but they also have a 1/4 acre piece of property that is essentially a remnant piece that is zoned commercial. And it's commercial general district, so it's the same zoning that we have existed, the existing zoning on the subject piece. That leaves this 1/4 acre piece in an awkward zone that it already would be tough to develop as it is, but it really belongs,
Who owns that?
the church does. It really belongs in a medium, single family zone consistent with the church building zone. So that's,
Single family there.
it's medium, single family density, which is what allowed, what religious use is allowed in that zone. So that probably is an inconsistency that needs to be dealt with at some point. I don't know if that's independent of this particular project and rezone request. Perhaps they ought to be together. The second question or point I'd like to bring up is the developer Visionary Homes. They have a great reputation. He talked about the surrounding uses. He did not talk about the use to the west. Currently, it's undeveloped land, but it's zoned mixed use. And to me, as I'm just a member of the public here tonight, I do have a graduate certificate from the University of Utah Land Use Planning. I think that a more consistent use there is mixed use, and
Mixed use commercial.
mixed use. It's mixed use district. And to Scarlett's point, I think she made a very good point. There's certain percentage ratios written into that zone.
Yeah.
And what I would ask the council to consider is a potential rezone, if a rezone was allowed at all, a mixed use district zone, and Visionary Homes could come with a variance request to the percentages in that mixed use district to better give the city institutional control of the land use and the site development. I think there's a great opportunity for live work product, but I think the city to help talk about the sales tax, I think you want some control of what that commercial use looks like personally. I would like control.
We have control, but we're also subject to the whims of the market.
Of course, right.
So it depends on who shows up.
Right.
The city of Millville has a lot of property in the city zone commercial, and no one showed up.
Right. Yeah.
I get your point. Let me add two things I want to add. Three things. Across the street, we have a developer who's working on a conceptual plan to develop the mixed use. He does have commercial. Different iterations of it. He does have commercial. He does have residential. I think it meets some of what you're looking at considering doing.
Can you please speak clearly into the microphone? Both of you are kind of breaking up a little bit.
Sure.
I can speak louder, but I didn't want to speak too loud. So that's going on. The other thing you said, what's your background?
Land use, real estate development.
What do you work for?
I own my own real estate brokerage.
Okay. Commercial.
Mostly commercial. We do some residential work. I mean, in Cache Valley,
You work out of your home.
I do.
Wow. How about amazing? So this particular idea resonates with you. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying
To live work.
Absolutely. And I think there's a real model here where these businesses could grow, right? You have someone who's doing a home-based business and it starts to grow, and they grow out of the space the Visionary has
Move across the street.
Well, they may move out of the city. And we want, if we have commercial space that can be subdivided and leased to commercial tenants, they can grow and expand in that space. Or, right, I think that gives us better flexibility to retain business we want in the city. So, anyway.
So, or they could live in the townhomes that Ben Steele is talking about developing. And then walk across the street to the commercial area that the developer there's working on. And they're looking at that retail office space environment, 3-story, breaking it up, leasing it out.
Yeah.
And walk to shopping on their way home.
Great point. Yeah. Thanks for taking it.
Third question.
Yeah.
Do you have family in Smithfield? Where?
Well, yeah, but by polygamy only.
So back
They don't-
100
they don't
years.
know me.
So we have extended family, more than.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I do. He gives our family a good name. He gives our family a good reputation. He's a good guy.
He's a good guy, yeah. He's a publisher.
Yeah, he is.
His wife's sister is adopted. So that's the extended family.
So like polygamy.
I love it. Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mayor.
You bet. Appreciate it.
So,
Thank you for your.
Mayor, we can hear Carrie when she talks into the mic, but I think you need to put that microphone like in your mouth. I can't, you guys hear?
It's off to
Not
the
even
side.
Sitting in front of a microphone.
Everyone can hear me. It's off to the side. If you put it in front of you.
I'm okay with that as long as he's the only one that uses that microphone. I don't ever want to use that one.
That's what I said.
I'll put a mask on. So it's kind of like we need 2 volumes.
No, you just need to
put it right in front of you.
Hold it like you're singing like a power ballad, you know, like you're gonna do a mic drop.
Fortunately, we're about not too far away from wrapping up this evening, at least within the next half hour.
Promise. I'm going out for chips and
It's up
salsa.
to you guys run the show.
lick Josh's chip.
Okay, good discussion. I think.
Let's vote.
I think this has allowed us to get into some other areas. If Ryan wants to put on an agenda, future council meeting, I think that'd be a healthy discussion for this council. Josh wants to vote. Any further questions, discussions of Ryan, Scarlett, of Ben? Or would you like to vote? So we have a motion on the table. We have a second. So we have a motion available for vote. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor of the rezone on the 2.2 or 3.21 acres on Gateway Drive, signify by saying aye.
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 Nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Christina, did you vote?
I said aye.
Okay. So we have 3 ayes. Vote is 3-2. We have Councilmember Eck, Beth, and Kirk voted yay. Nays, Paulson, and Seeley. Am I correct on that? Okay. So the motion
Absolutely.
rezone carries. Thank you all. Great discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff.
Appreciate your comments too, Nate. All right. We come to council reports, last item on the agenda. So who'd like to volunteer? Carrie?
I'll go first. I don't have anything. Next.
That makes that easier. Carrie, you got something you want to?
It just youth council, we've got a good group of high schoolers. We've got 18 or 19 of them, and we met and they're super excited. And it happened that 2 of the 3 volunteers to do the new logo and t-shirt were my daughter and Janelle's daughter. So Janelle's daughter did a new logo for the youth council, and it looks great, and we'll get it up on the site. And my daughter did a logo for the theme for the year, which they decided I'm going to become proud of it. But we're youth driven. It's 6 feet together. So they are uniting, and we're going to do some service, and it will be a fun little youth council. And I think we can use them to do a lot of good things for the city. They are, the youth are planning this, so we'll see how it goes down, but, or if it goes down, but they're working on the Friday night before Halloween, doing a movie in the park. And we've made some suggestions that it could, places they could do it, so it could be a drive-in if the weather's cold. But we'll see what they come up with, but that Friday and the community will be invited. They'll do a family-friendly movie. And then they are also, like Scarlett said, working toward December, helping as much as they can with the city tree lighting.
Great.
And they'll also have an activity in November they'll be sworn in, and then we'll have the mayor or Ryan or someone great teach them about how city works and give them a tour of the city building, and so they can do some learning as well.
Right?
I would suppose that everybody has read about the new Utah health guidance levels, transmission index, and everybody's familiar with that. COVID virus continues to raise its ugly head and is on the increase in the state, as you're all well aware. Again, having to deal with this pandemic is we need to be vigilant, but we need to move forward. We need to be able to live to a degree our lives, but we have to manage ourselves by taking precautions. But life doesn't stop. We need to move forward, but we all need to be very aware of social distancing, wearing masks, hand washing, and avoiding crowds. Now, we are in the high transmission index area in Cache Valley. Social groups and casual groups and so forth are limited to 10 or less, and but that doesn't affect churches and meetings and other things like that go on. It's social gatherings. So just be aware, be wise, use your head, study it out, what they're trying to do. Let's see if we can play our part in getting this thing under control and until we can find some other solution. And that's about all I have.
Thanks, Brent. Janelle?
I don't have anything. I'm really happy to have the water agreement passed tonight. Other than that, I guess I'm going to work on more water stuff after this.
Christina?
I don't have anything.
All right, couple things. The folks at Strata have produced a video for consumption by the public that introduces a member of the public to what fiber is about, what the construction process involves. They've made some modifications based on comments myself and Ryan have made. We will probably add an intro at the beginning from one of the council members or member of the city staff. But that's where that's at. I think you'll find that interesting. We could probably send a link after that. They did a really nice job. They really did. Also, Ryan and I did a presentation to the COG, and that was Monday night. There is $5.5 million anticipated to be available. There are grant applications for $8.6 million. All of the projects were well done, well presented, well documented. Most of them involve safety mitigation. Most of them are big projects. Logan is 3.2 million of that. Ryan asked me what I thought chances were, and it's up to the mayors how they rank all of the projects. But they're all good projects, and there is a chance that we will not get funded this year for that project. So we go back to the well next year. That's where that's at. Ryan, any comment on that?
Mayor,
Yeah,
go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to comment that that was what our expectation was when we went down to apply this year. We knew that there was a chance. We still hope to and did our best. But we came to that. We gave a 3-year expectation for the residents because we thought that this might be a possibility. Hopefully we get it. That's still the goal and hope. We've done our best and we do have a good project in it. So anyway, sorry, go ahead, Brent.
Well, I was just going to say at one point in the discussion, it seems like last year or thereabouts, there was a comment made that the city had the funds and they could use their own funds to do the road. Is that still a possibility, or are we still going to go through the 2-year process this year and next year of requesting then if we don't get the next year, are we going to use city funds to do the road? Are we looking at 1 year, 2 years out to get that road done?
I think we'd have it applied for 2 years, what I think, but that would really be a council decision whether we want to use funds. And I'd heard that some council, I don't know that that's united whether you want us to go that way. So during a budgeting process, we'd want to make sure. So when we come to our next budgeting process, I believe we're going to submit for grants for next year. So we wouldn't have it in next budget, but we could budget it in the 3rd year. If we don't get the grants, we could the plan would be to look to budget it in the 3rd year if that's what the council wanted us to do. But that would be whether that's the council decision to go in that direction.
Well, I just want to make the comment that we have pretty much put ourselves out there that we have promised these folks that we're going to do that. And 2 years is we talked about, if we didn't get it this year, we'd apply next year. I really think we as a council need to be very cognizant of the fact that we promised these folks we're going to do something about it.
We did promise them 3 years. Is that right, Ryan?
3 years is what we said that we would take it, apply, and our desire was to build within 3 years, and that could give us a couple of chances at the COG. That's what our expectation is.
Ryan, any other potential for grant money from some other source?
Not under an MPO, unless we can get onto the MPO's list. But where we're in an MPO, we're severely limited in our chance because that holds up a lot of the money and it flows it through quite the filter. So we are severely limited because we're part of that MPO. There's benefits and disadvantages, but one of the disadvantages, we don't have a lot of other routes to go to when we fit under that.
Okay, that's all I have. Anything else? Scarlett? All right. Need a motion to close the council meeting of October 16th.
I'll make a motion
21st.
that we close.
Motion from Councilwoman Kirk. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Councilwoman Seeley. All in favor of closing the council meeting?
Aye.
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 Okay.